like to call to order the special board meeting of Community High School District 128. If I could invite everybody to please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It has been an honor to serve as Board of Education. We're going to do roll call next. Yeah. It has been an honor to serve in the role of Board of Education President. At this time, I am stepping down, and per our board attorney, our Vice President, Jim Batson, will assume the role until our reorganization meeting after the school board elections in April. The Vice President will remain open until the reorganization meeting, and the board secretary, Sonal Kulkarni, can step into vice president duties as needed. So it is my pleasure tonight to turn the gavel over to our new president, Jim Batson.
Thank you. I do want to thank Lisa. I'd be remiss without thanking her for all her hard work and diligence in her role. She's been a great leader of this board, and I, thank her for all the work she's done, and wish her well as she continues her board work, just in a different mode. So we will start with a roll call.
Jim Batson.
Here.
Kara Benjamin. Don Carmichael.
Here.
Kara Drumkey. Here. Lisa Hessel.
Here.
Middleish Cotwell.
Here.
Sonal Kulkarni.
Here.
Okay.
I did get a text from Kara. She's on her way.
Okay, thank you. Quick review of the agenda. This is a special board meeting. We really have two key items to discuss. We start with an invitation for public comment shortly. For discussion, the superintendent search process, and we have some folks here that will be working with us on starting that process. And then we do have one action item. It's an approval for an asbestos abatement here at Libertyville High School as part of the construction project that's ongoing. And then we'll move into our committee meeting. So I will start by opening it up. Carol, do we have any sign up for public comment? Nope. Anybody wish to address the board? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. We'll open this up, the superintendent search process.
Hi, it's nice to be back, and it's nice to see you all again. We wanted to thank you first. First order of business is thank you for selecting us. We're honored and very excited to be working with you on this important project. Our goal is to make sure not a minute passes by in the course of this that you ever look back and think maybe you didn't make the right decision. We're going to do our very best for you and have a great outcome. Also, thank you for being flexible with your time and meeting us early. We know your usual time is 5:30, and we really appreciate busy people making that accommodation for us so that our whole team could be here. We're not going to do formal intros again, but I'm here with my teammates. This is Phil Earhart, and this is Victoria Stockton. And as we told you, we're the team that presented. We're the team that's going to do the work. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to take you through a series of decisions that we have to make together. We have a basic model. We have a basic template that we use, but this is important, and I want you to remember it through the course of the night. We also told you that we are here to customize this search for you, and not one size does not fit all. And so while we're always going to take you through the process, there's choices we're going to have you make. And even if we take you through and something just doesn't sound right, please ask us. I'm not sure that's what we need in our community. Could we do it this way? We want you to leave tonight feeling really good about the process and feeling like it's District 128's special search, which it's going to be. We're also going to try to familiarize you with the timeline that we'll use so that you have a very clear idea of where we are and where we're headed. And hope everybody brought their calendars because we're going to be nudges. And wherever we can nail you down on a specific date, we're going to try to do that tonight because it really helps throughout the rest of the process. So that's what we're going to try to do. Phil is going to take the lead on this now and take you through a series of decisions and taking a look at the schedule, and we'll see how we do. Oh, you already
Thank you,
got it.
Joe. So we'd like to do, board, if you would, there's a planning meeting agenda. We're just going to follow that straight through for you. And then the second item we have there is the vacancy notice. We'll talk about that tonight. And then the third handout that you have there is the timeline that Joe referenced. We'll be getting your calendars out and really trying to nail down the dates for that. Those dates seem like a long ways out, but as you know, you're very, very busy people. We need to try to coordinate that the best we can. So the first item we have is section B is the 3 different types of searches. If you recall, we talked somewhat about that in our presentation, but we thought it would be good as a team to go back and review those with you, talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of each one. And then as Joe said, customize that to meet the needs of the board and the school district with that. So the 3 types we have, let's first of all talk about the confidential search. The total confidential search is from the very beginning until the very end. None of the candidates' names are disclosed throughout that process. So that would mean until the board would name the superintendent at a public board meeting would be the first time that that person's name has been disclosed with that as well. So that's one type. The advantage of the confidential would be candidates who are currently sitting superintendents especially really don't have as much risk of getting their name out there, so to speak, if you do the confidential search. The downside of that is that it does not give the public as much of an opportunity and the stakeholders to have some type of say to that. Obviously, with that, we have to always remind everybody that the final decision is the Board of Education. Anybody else, the feedback we get is advisory only with that. So that's the confidential search with it. The second one is the open search. We're blessed here in Illinois where we're not mandated to do open searches. Some of us have done searches in other states where it's open. We do not recommend that from the standpoint everything is done in the open. It does somewhat risky for candidates to put their names in there because their names are going to be out there from the very beginning up until the very end with that as well. And that makes the pool obviously much smaller with that too. The third one is what we call the hybrid search, and that's a combination. And that would be that it's kept confidential until we get down to after the first round of interviews. Typically, we will interview and bring to the board, what do you say, 10 to 12 candidates, probably, something like that? We'll bring to the board. We'll interview, and then we'll bring usually five or six to the board to actually interview. Once you've narrowed that down to, let's say, 2, at the most 3, we can then have, if you would like, an advisory group of stakeholders who can provide feedback in that. And we can talk more about that process when we get down to it, but that gives you an idea with that as well. So those are the 3 types with that. And at this point, as Joe invited you before, ask any questions that you would like on the 3 types of the searches and anything else on the advantages and disadvantages. Joe and Victoria, is there anything else that you would like to add about those 3 different types of searches?
Well, we think that your district is definitely a destination district. It's not a stepping stone district. So we think that the majority of candidates are going to be sitting superintendents who are most likely very successful and enjoying a nice run where they're at. Total openness, as Phil said, we would not recommend. But so I hope, I don't know if you as a board have had a chance to discuss this, and if not, this is the time to do it. What kind of search you want. Again, the confidential is a little bit of a security blanket for sitting superintendents. And we think with a totally confidential search, the pool will be as big as possible. Most superintendents are okay with the hybrid model if you want to bring in some parents, teacher leaders, and so on, as long as they were willing to sign a confidential, keeping it confidential. It's not a big legal document. It probably doesn't hold much weight, but it does give candidates the feeling that these folks are serious and they'll do their best to not disclose our names. So we hope that you will discuss one of those two options. And unless you have anything else, let's hear from the board and see which way you want us to go. We have done it both ways and had great success with both models. If you do the hybrid, there always is the danger that the names get out, no matter what kind of thing people sign. I had a district, which I will not name, but by the time people got to their cars in the parking lot, one of our candidates knew that his name was out there already. And that was very embarrassing and prevented him from continuing in the search. So you don't want anything like that to happen if at all possible.
So my initial question is, I assume you need this sort of answer as quickly as possible, because you're going to put this out, you're going to start gathering candidates' interest and whatnot. And we need to know in order to tell them what the process looks like.
Right.
So
That'll be one of the first questions they'll be asking us.
Yeah.
I can say I prioritize a candidate who has strong superintendent experience. I agree with you that we are a destination district. And as much as I value as much input as possible, the most important thing is having the biggest, most qualified candidate pool. So I think I'm leaning in favor towards a confidential search to make sure that we have the biggest pool of sitting superintendents, successful sitting superintendents apply for the role.
So I have a question though. I want to make sure that there's a difference between our search process and our profile creation. I mean, I want to make sure that even if we were to go a more confidential search process, having input from different stakeholders.
On the front end,
especially our
tons of
candidate,
input.
we need to make sure that that process is open in creating the profile.
Yes, that's exactly right. When we talk about in the third one coming down, our topic on there, we'll be talking about 3 avenues that the stakeholders will have to do that. The first one will be board members, and we'll be asking you to give us a time that we can call you and do a one-to-one board interview. And then the second one will be focus groups, community engagement. And you'll see in item C, there are some names of different groups that we've put on there for that. And the third one will be surveys. So we want to be able to say to the public that everyone has the opportunity to have input on this through those 3 avenues with that as well. We'll even go to the extent to say that in the focus groups, some of them may be in person and some of those may be virtual. And in a district where I've just done a search recently for the evening one, in one room we had in person, in the next room we had virtual going on, so that people would have the opportunity to do that. Does that clarify the?
One more thing, we prioritize the input being the most valuable on the front end of this process, so that we work really hard. There's no one who can come to you and say, I didn't have an opportunity to share input, because either the survey focus groups come to the meeting, it's there for you. And the creation of the leadership profile, as you might remember from our presentation, is one of the most important aspects. It guides the entire process. So plenty of input on that front end.
And I'll just add to that, that really gives your stakeholders, a sense of like, we are a part of the search. So the ones that I've participated in when we've done those focus group, they really have appreciated having the opportunity to share their thoughts, their feelings, and what they would like to see in the next leader. So we really emphasize the importance of developing that leadership profile with stakeholder input.
We appreciate that. That's very important to us as well, and one of the reasons that your firm was selected.
Good.
We also might just add to that to say that when we do the leadership profile, we'll present that at a public board meeting. We will ask that the district put that on their website, so the leadership profile is there. And then we will also ask that the survey results, because they're very quantitative, it's a closed-ended one, those be posted on the website as well. So as Victoria
Very
said,
transparent.
Very
it's
transparent.
very transparent. Everyone knows exactly that they've had a time to give their input on that.
Middleish, you were going to say something?
I don't think there was any ambiguity in our mind. And forgive me if I'm speaking for everyone, that people will be involved in the front end of the process. I think the question really was more around where would the public have any input following the leadership profile development.
Right.
And that's what I think we are discussing.
That is correct.
Right?
Exactly correct.
As far as keeping the search confidential, I understand, but you've not had any other school districts that have figured out a way to still have any public involvement, at least closer to the finalization of the candidates, at least from an input perspective, or is there a way to anonymize it?
The most common way that boards who decide they would like to open up the final decision to additional input, it's usually, as Phil mentioned, it comes after you've done a first round of interviews. So you've narrowed it from 6 to 2, let's just say. Before you are going to interview the 2 finalists for your second time, somewhere in between, we would help you organize a representative group. It would include administrators, parents, teachers.
Okay.
We would work with that group to craft a professional kind of interview. We would help them develop the questions that would be appropriate. The group would sign the confidential agreement, interview the candidates, and here's the important part. People need to know this going in. We don't have a conversation with them. We don't try to reach group consensus about who they want. They are simply asked to fill out a piece of paper that says, these are the strengths of candidate A. These are my areas of concern, candidate A. They will fill out in writing their input. We will gather it and hand it to you. No ranking. We don't want them to say, we like this one best. And none of that is helpful because you're the ones who have to make the decision. And also, there won't be a consensus amongst the people who do this. There never is. So the most valuable input they could give is give you something to review from their perspective. But that's how it works best when boards want a little bit of extra community involvement.
I mean, I can
think
speak for
that's-
myself. I would welcome that.
Yeah, I would too, and I would say especially given that we have so many board seats open, I think we have to find a way of including those folks who are going to be running for the election. We have to find a way of including them because they're the ones who will actually be working with this person.
So,
And doesn't that somewhat mirror the process that we followed previously? Having a hybrid model where stakeholders were allowed to meet with the final candidates?
So my initial thought was go full confidential. And here's the scenario that I'm thinking. We have a superintendent out there somewhere that has no interest in leaving their current position. They're very comfortable and they're doing great things, and it's a good situation, but not the best situation possible. And we might be able to provide them with the best situation possible. That individual wouldn't typically go out and interview and apply for other positions, but maybe this one they would. And if somehow the word got out and they didn't get this position, that somehow taints their current position or causes them some kind of issue in their current role, knowing that, you know, it's different if you've made a decision, I want to move on, I want to move up, I want to, you know, search the area. But if I'm one that's not really interested, but boy, that one could just be the one, and then it doesn't turn out, it may put a cloud over their future. And that would be a decision they would have to make. And maybe that decision then would say, no, I'm not going to stretch. I'm not going to go for that.
That would always be the risk with applying anyway, right? Like,
But the
it's also
difference
the risk
is,
with everyone that they talk to, including board members, in theory.
So I think there's a question, I think something you brought up, which was in my mind too, is when you go to the last step, let's say we have our top 2 and we want more feedback, is there a way to anonymize so that we're not, you're looking at 2 resumes, can you anonymize them so one cannot really figure out who it is? I know it's hard, but just wanted to throw that out there, plus the confidentiality agreement. Can that together give us a higher level of confidence?
As Joe described the process, the other thing we do is to also have it off-site. In a high school district, there's so many activities going on that we have it off-site with that. And we also limit the number. Joe mentioned some possibility of who the stakeholders might be. We try to keep it around 10.
Yep.
To do that.
but they meet the candidates in person.
But they
They
meet the
meet in
person. There's
person.
no way we can keep that confidential at that
You know,
point.
within minutes, just looking at their resume, one Google search and they'll know who that superintendent
Yeah.
was.
So we need some commitment from the people involved, and it's like, you know, we have to be protective and supportive of whoever is there, whether they get through or not. And I think we just have to ensure whoever participates has that mindset.
And I'll just say, as a sitting superintendent, I'll go back to what Jim said. That would be my fear. I have a contract, I'm happy where I'm at, but if that one job that might be my dream job, I considered applying for, if I don't get the job, you know, how do you go back and explain if your name gets out? Because you may be happy where you're at, but this is that one ultimate opportunity that you may be seeking,
And
so.
those are the kind of stars that we want.
Right,
I'm not interested in an associate superintendent who's never
Right.
been superintendent before. From an HR perspective, an associate superintendent can say to their current district,
Exactly.
hey,
They know.
I'm applying. This is my shot.
right,
And it's confidentiality is not important.
Yep.
Everybody knows that at some point they're going to go for
Right.
the superintendent job.
absolutely.
Those are not the candidates that I'm interested in for this job.
Now,
I-
if, I'm sorry. I didn't
No,
mean to
go
cut
ahead.
you. I was gonna say, and to your point, if they're selected, then no big deal. But if they are the number 2, you know, they might not consider applying for the reasons
Because
my
there's a
colleague.
risk.
Because there is that risk. And I know it's a difficult decision that you all have to make because you want to get as much stakeholder input as possible. Hence the reason why we really do a thorough job. And I can say, because I've participated in many focus groups, we really listen to what the stakeholders have to say, and we utilize that. We synthesize that data down so we can almost pretty much nail down exactly what they're looking for in the next leader, so that you all have all of the information from multiple stakeholder groups so that you are an informed board and can make, obviously, the ultimate decision. But it is a risk. We've done it both ways, but I'm just speaking as a sitting superintendent. I would be hesitant to apply for a hybrid or an open search And I just wanted to, obviously we're about transparency. We just want to share from our experiences. And obviously, if you all have any other questions, we'll answer as best as we can. But I just want to share that as a sitting superintendent, what will be my level of hesitation. But I totally understand wanting that stakeholder feedback because it is important.
I'd like to hear from a couple of the others that haven't had a chance.
I lean towards confidential.
Okay.
No, I see the need for confidentiality, and I do want to have our best candidates, but I think we're sitting in a different situation, this board, and most especially because we are going to have a lot of seats open, and to have 5 potential non-board members making that decision, I think we have to somehow, whether it's hybrid in that we say we are going to limit we're going to limit stakeholders to potential candidates, but somehow including those people who are going to be working with the superintendent as a part of the decision-making process and keeping it, I understand not
That's a good
making it
point.
hybrid, and as board members, we all have our pledge to confidentiality, and we could break it too, but at least having those candidates, by the time we get to the point where we have 2 or 3 candidates, we will know likely who is running, and at least recognizing those people who are running as a part of that process.
But it is this board, it is the sitting board's responsibility to find a
I
superintendent.
understand that.
And we won't know until April who the community has chosen.
Yeah,
You asked my opinion.
I
That's my
understand
opinion.
the desire to
My opinion
have.
is that I think that those people who have shown some kind of interest in sitting and possibly sitting in the
Yeah.
board should be a part of the process towards the end.
I understand
I'd agree.
the desire to have that kind of input. And maybe there's a way that we could specify some kind of a focus, for lack of a better term, the focus group to include specifically those individuals and invite them specifically. My concern is we don't know who's going to apply and who do we choose to join in. Let's say we have 10 people run for the open positions. How do we decide which of those we include and which of those we don't include? And how do we know which of those have good intent, bad, and whatever? We don't know. And the voters haven't spoken yet to choose whichever ones are going to be the ultimate board members. So while I certainly understand the desire to have the future board members participate in some way, I think the risk of having them participate directly and understand who the candidates, even if it's the top 2, I think we run the risk of losing those very top, those very best candidates.
But you can't
first.
assume bad intent, right? We have to start with assuming good intent from whoever's applying for the board, right?
I
And
think
by
we're
that
getting-
time, we should know when we are down to the finalists of this search.
But we can't make that decision at that point.
People will have made a decision whether or not to throw their hat into the ring. long
Becky-
We'll
before.
have already lost a handful of candidates potentially because of that.
Becky, can I put you on the spot and get your input, please?
Sure. This is the 4th interim superintendency that I've served, and the conversation that's going on around this table goes around other board tables as well. It's not unusual. Excuse me, times have evolved, and the number of highly qualified candidates is less than it's ever been. There are highly qualified candidates, but it's not what it was 20 years ago. There's no question about that. And I think that for people who are sitting superintendents, they have to think very hard as to whether they wish to leave the place that they're employed at this point in time. I think that the searches that I have seen most recently are in fact confidential searches. There are lots of elements and lots of layers to this, but you can see the process that has been outlined here provides a lot of opportunity for community input, a lot of opportunity for listening to what the community has to say. So again, I would just say that most of the ones that I have seen most recently are in fact the confidential searches. Does that help?
And they're confidential in order to maximize the number of applicants who are
Yes.
applying.
Yes.
I think we have enough feedback and enough nodding and interest in the confidential search, I would say that I would like to move forward with a confidential search, but finding a way that we can at some point identify and get feedback closer to the point in time of selection from those people who have, put their hat in the ring, that have gone to that extent to run for the board for any of the open seats that are coming up. And I encourage people to do that. But I think we have consensus to move on with a confidential.
This is as Becky said, this is a conversation that goes on quite a bit, especially when you have the cycle of the boards being up for election. What some boards have done is said at this point, for example, Jim, you said should we move on with confidential. When we do our board workshop with you and slate the candidates, at that time we can revisit that to see who the candidates are, not so much talking about their names, but are they a sitting superintendent? Are they an associate? Are they a sitting superintendent who's, I'm making this up, coming from Missouri, who's retiring? They can retire there at the age of 55 and coming here. And I think we can revisit that time and have a little more information than we have tonight to do that if the board would want to pursue that approach.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, we could at a certain point seek permission from the candidates that we've selected. And if they're all okay with moving towards hybrid at that point, then we
do
can
that.
make that
Yes.
modification.
Exactly.
We've done that, Lisa.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
That's-
move forward with a confidential at this
Right.
point.
No, I
And-
don't want to affect our candidate pool, but I also think the reverse is true. When a superintendent is coming in to work with potentially 5 new people, they should have the opportunity to see, although I'm sure all of our candidates are going to be wonderful, but they should have that opportunity to see if they could work with these people. So I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, it
It's
does.
just fair to them.
Well said, and I
Great
think
point.
that that just reinforces a good decision that let's move ahead confidential, but let's revisit it when we get a little bit better taste of what the reality is.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
And then
You
that'll
got it.
be a true customized search.
Mhm. Nice.
So moving on to the leadership profile. This one's fairly straightforward, so it's not quite as much of an issue as the other ones. As we've already mentioned to you before, we want to try to maximize the amount of input. And there are really 3 basic questions that will be asked, whether you're a board member in the interviews, whether you are in a focus group, or whether you are filling out a survey. And the first question is, what are the strengths of the district? Number 2, what are going to be the challenges and issues facing the district when the new superintendent comes on board? And the third one is, what are the personal attributes and the professional skills that you're looking for the next superintendent? So we'll be giving you a list there of stakeholders that typically we have used for high school districts. You can customize that any way that you would like. One that we feel is important to put on there for a high school district would be the second to the last bullet. And that is the elementary sending districts, in that we realize you have Vernon Hills, Libertyville, Oak Grove, and Roundout. And I think it's important for those 4 districts to have some input as far as their superintendents being able to be part of a focus group. That's the one area that we think is very important with a high school district. So looking at that list, what we'd like to ask you are the following questions. Is that pretty much the list you would like to do with that? The second question is, we typically have a contact person from the school district who is someone who knows the district very well in the logistics and would actually work with us on setting up, for example, I'll just use teachers as a focus group, for example. Okay, when can we do those? We're going to visit each of the 2 high schools, what time of day we're going to do that. Same way with the district office, and we go through the total logistics with that. So first question would be the focus groups that we have there. Is there any other groups that you would like to have on there? Keeping in mind that we also mentioned the community and open community groups we'd have in the evening. Those are open to anybody. Anybody can come to that meeting and to provide their input. We would suggest, if you'd agree with us, that we do that 2 modalities, one virtual and one in person, so that people have the opportunity to do that as well.
I would suggest that we do one at each school, or one at each
No
building.
problem at all. Yeah.
And
Is there,
then the online survey, though, would also capture general public, because item D here, over and above what we're talking about in item C, we'd also have an opportunity for feedback from
Correct, Jim.
Exactly.
anybody and everybody through
And
this
during the-
online survey.
Exactly, Jim. And during the community engagement groups, we'll be asking them, let's say we're talking to the teachers at Vernon Hills, for example, to remind their colleagues to make sure they complete the survey so we get the word out there. We'll also ask you in a couple minutes who we should work with as far as communications with that, because we'll want to work with them on putting out communications, all the different modalities you do, and to all the different stakeholder groups as well.
The survey will be right on your websites, so anybody can access. What Phil and the team really need is, this is the one area of the search that we can't do on our own. We have to bother you a little bit. And because we just don't know who the players are. We don't know who to invite. We don't know how to get the information out. So Becky, not to put you on the spot, but do you have a person that you could steer us to that could help us create this?
Well,
I'm pointing.
I think BK is the first person that I thought of, but I also thought of Mary in her role as the Director of Communications, also has the ability to reach out, has contacts across the district with all of our feeder districts.
I think
can
it'll be a
update the
combination of those
website.
two.
Lisa, that's a good point.
Brian,
We're
was
going
for
to ask
the
you.
interim.
Bryant is, I mean, everybody is swamped, but I wonder if it's something Mary could take.
It's usually a 2-person team, just for the 2 people you're talking about. Someone like O'Brien, and then your communications person would work in tandem with us.
But
That
on the
sound okay?
online survey, I mean, I know it becomes overwhelming when you think about how do you access all of these people that have interest, and we don't want to put it all on Bryant and just Mary. Is there a way? I know when we went through this process previously, there was an email that went through
Oh, yeah.
parents
Oh, yeah.
that just went out. If you have interest in serving in any of these focus groups, contact us.
Mhm.
So I would suggest that we also have some kind of universal.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Some, they've done through emails, they've done it
I don't think
through
you're going
text
to have a
me-
lack of participants.
Yeah.
I-
text messaging. They do it through like one call where everyone gets a phone call, all the different modalities on using that.
I think oftentimes the superintendent's office, Carol, and I would provide support for that. So it would be part of the team effort. We would have that communication piece, we would have the support piece, we would figure out some of those things as well. Right? I think that's a model that has been used in the past.
Exactly.
So the superintendent's office plus the communications person, we would be able to use both in a nice tandem, tag team,
Yes.
get all the info out, get it all organized. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. That'll work very well.
Getting back to the initial question, any of the board members have any other stakeholder groups that you think need to be included? I think there's a lot covered there, and with the additional surveys and, open meetings, that we should be able to cover just about anyone that wants to participate.
Yeah.
Great.
Definitely.
Then the next item is the online survey, and we typically do that in English and in Spanish. Is there another language that you would like it in? If there is another language, typically what we do is to ask you if you have someone who's a translator in the district to assist us with that. We don't have anybody on our staff who knows 101 different languages, but we'd be happy to help with that. We have recently done one in a high school district, and Polish was a fairly predominant language. I'm pretty familiar with the area. I would think that might be one you want. If you would, we can offer that one as well readily.
I think considering the demographics of Vernon Hills in this case especially, it may be wise to have another language or two used on those surveys. And Mary, you could probably speak.
Ukrainian
Yeah.
and Russian.
Russian, yep.
Yeah, I was gonna second what Mary said, that our top three languages that our families report speaking at home are Spanish, Russian, and Ukrainian.
Do you have someone on staff that could help us with those two languages?
We don't know, but the administrators might.
Okay.
I know that we have staff who speak it. I'm not sure if, depending on how robust the communication is, we do have a translation service that we work with. as well.
Okay, we'll work with you.
Yeah.
That'll work.
We do have the Bilingual Parents Association as a possible resource.
That'll work.
Yep.
Thank you for your help
Yeah,
with that.
we'll make it happen.
And then item E is the liaison for the search. As Joe mentioned in his introductory remarks, we want to make sure we have clear and regular communications with you throughout the entire time. We'll be providing you with updates so you know where we are. That's another reason we want to work also with the communications person so that when we get down to the timeline here for a minute, he or she can put that, pretty much that timeline up there and then put some comments on there. This has now been completed. They'll send reminders out to survey. There's 4 more days left. Make sure you fill out that survey, that type of thing. So for the liaison for the board, who will be the liaison for that?
I would say at this point, just put me in there. and
Jim?
we'll-
Okay.
You can decide.
And Jim, I'm going to be the liaison for BWP,
Okay,
just
so
so,
not like we've never worked together.
no. We're good.
And then for the administrative, I think we've heard that we're going to use the district office staff and then also communications that as well. Great.
Great.
The next item we have on there, if you look at the second handout, is a vacancy notice. And we wanted to provide that with you. If you see any glaring mistakes or anything, let us know, but we did not freelance this. We took that basically off of your website, and it's pretty factual, we hope. But if there's something on there that we've left out that you would like to have in there, we'd like to do that. The second thing we want to do tonight, and Joe's going to walk you through that, we'll be talking about the different organizations that we would publicize this to. Joe?
Yeah, in a minute, we're going to do this right here. I'm going to let you read this and you can give us feedback right away. And you're not going to hurt our feelings if you want any changes. This was our best attempt. It's hard to create the vacancy notice because we have to do it before the leadership profile is developed, because we're going to get this out possibly tomorrow or the next day. We're going to hit the ground running. We don't want to waste a minute. And so we want to make sure this has got your name on it. So we want to make sure it's okay. So why don't we take a minute? You can read it through. If there's anything you want changed, let us know. And then I'll tell you what we're going to do as far as posting.
I wanted to see if we could add the word servant in front of leader. The ideal candidate will have an accomplished record as a servant leader. Just wanted to throw that out there. Someone who's there to serve.
Servant leader.
That's a very important word that often comes up in the leadership profile. So I would have no problem putting that in.
And it's a question mark on your, I don't know what you call it. It's one of your goals, goal 6.
It is, that's exactly right.
Good,
Yeah, good call.
good revision. Mhm.
I would also ask if Mary has,
I was
Thoughts
going
on
to add the Transition Pathways Program or school.
Mary, where would that be?
Right there.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
2 high schools and the transition
Thank you.
school.
Oh, thanks. Good catch.
We have a separate facility.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you was giving it to us. Okay. Can I just keep that? Okay.
So maybe just nitpicking, but the last sentence, instead of calling it qualified and experienced administrator, can we just say qualified and experienced superintendent? Because we are looking for somebody who's an experienced superintendent
Yep,
and not a newbie. So
that's better.
if we just throw it in there, it's unambiguous that
There
that's
you
what
go.
we are looking for.
Got it.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Could we also add, further down, it mentions that we're supported by faculty and the board. Can we also add support staff?
Hardworking, committed,
Dedicated faculty
faculty
is
and
hardworking.
support staff?
Yes.
Okay.
Underneath the district.
Sure.
We usually put that in there, but that's good to
Mhm.
go ahead and have that on there. Sure.
Definitely.
You leave something like that, this in people's hands and they come up with more changes.
That's
So,
okay.
At the risk of
We
that.
wouldn't have asked you if we didn't want you to do this.
I'm just wondering if instead of saying a proven propensity for collaboration, could it be proven record of collaboration? It's not that someone wants to do it, we need to show that you've done it.
Record instead of propensity?
Yeah, how about instead of proven propensity, we say a track record for collaboration and team
Sure.
building?
I like that better.
Yeah.
It's more normal language
Yeah,
too.
simplify it a little bit.
And your point, Mithilish, for saying it instead of administrator to say superintendent, are you implying if you are a sitting superintendent, then apply for
That's why we-
associate? Don't,
We prefer it, right?
That-
That's what we are looking for.
My only question is, I completely agree. I don't foresee someone who isn't, but at this point, do we want to limit the candidate pool? Do we want as many people to apply as possible and then we can apply our own filter? I'm not sure we want to eliminate anybody just from applying. Because of what I have heard, in addition to Becky's comments about the candidate pools being so small, I think just from the application standpoint, it might be a concern to limit it at the application stage, knowing full well that it is highly unlikely that somebody that doesn't have superintendent's experience would be passed on.
I know
to
that
us.
you prefer an experienced superintendent, but I hope you'll be at least somewhat open because sometimes we find just unbelievably talented up and comers that you wouldn't want to just brush over. And sometimes they come from big districts and they have big responsibilities that are pretty commensurate with being a superintendent. So I would hope that you'd leave those options open. And believe it or not, even in districts like yours, I don't know if Phil's had this experience, but the last several searches I've done have been filled by talented up and comers as opposed to sitting superintendents. Sometimes boards find the sitting superintendents a little stuck in their ways or maybe even have baggage from their old districts. So-
Understood, but here's one way to look at it, right? If we put it in there that that's what we are desiring, the people who are good can apply, and you're also conducting a search, right? Like we are also networking. So that's our thing to see whether when we get the candidates, whether we will consider others who we feel are strong and can potentially fit the role. But we can start out being ambitious because we are backing ourselves that we are a good school district and we can attract good candidates. It's just a nuance to it.
We'll do it however you want.
I guess I tend to lean towards keeping the superintendent name in there, because I think you're right. If you do have a high flyer that hasn't been a superintendent, but it's really fully qualified, and they're going to be ambitious enough. They're going to apply anyway. They're not going
Exactly.
to, they're not going to read through all this and look at that one word and say, oh, no, I'm not going to apply. They're going to apply. So we'll still have that opportunity, but I think you're right. It sets the tone that we're looking for somebody with a certain level of experience.
I don't think it's going to make or break
I don't think it's
any
gonna make-
candidate.
So I'm
I'm
think putting
comfortable
that in there
making that
sets-
switch.
sort of sets the bar
Sure.
a little higher.
I keep coming, I think, I don't know if this is too vague, but something about organizational management. All of these things, if you check these boxes, are successful organizational managers. But I think that's what we're looking for mostly, somebody who can take their collaborating with other departments, something that brings the organization together. And I think I don't know how to say that, but when I'm reading these different different individual characteristics, I'm not seeing it coming together and being our organizational leader and bringing all of these components together.
Great point. But I do want to fill you in on, educators, we have our own language. And in education ease, when a term organizational management is used, we usually think about that as compared to an instructional leader. We have instructional leader who is going to excel in teaching and learning and student achievement. When educators hear manager or management, we think you're talking about buildings, facilities, making sure the buses run on time, and that kind of thing.
I also think that, that this is sort of, for lack of a better term, a boilerplate or a mom and apple pie kind of thing. This isn't really our list of desires, because we don't know what those are yet. We haven't done the survey.
It's not the candidate profile.
It's not the candidate profile that we're trying to attract. We're just trying to give enough
That's a
to
great
say,
point.
yeah, this sounds good.
I think
I'm
it
gonna
is
apply.
okay to be a little bit general.
And I was just going to underscore that. That'll definitely come out when we do the focus groups and in the leadership profile. And that's something I'm noting now. I want someone with good organizational skills, which is an important point.
No, it's beyond
Yeah.
And I am a 30-year educator, so I'm
I'm
educating.
sorry if I insulted you.
You did not insult me at all, but I get the educating.
Just
I'm
bringing
looking
everybody
for a
together.
I
Mhm.
think that's one of the things that's what we need.
Mhm.
is
Let's see
somebody
if that
who's-
emerges during the creation of the leadership profile.
But I
think
hear
it will.
exactly what you're saying.
I do
Someone
too.
that
It
can
will.
I do
bring
too.
everyone together for sure.
Yeah,
So
I think
you've
it's
got-
more of a people leader. You want a
Mhm.
strong people leader and someone who can organize.
Mhm.
It's like organizational change management has been some sort of difficult with some of the things going on. I think we need someone who can do that. So, but I think this is good enough for where it is right now.
You've
What
got
we're
some
going to
adjustments.
do, thank you for the input. I wrote it all down. We will revise it. It's even better now. The first place we post this is the BWP website. And believe it or not, that's actually one of the most effective websites, and it's absolutely free, of course. But people all over the country check our website regularly. And within a day or two, we're going to get this up there. Once the leadership profile is developed and we've had a chance to present it back to you and you've posted it on your website, we'll also include it with the vacancy notice so that candidates can have both the vacancy notice and the leadership profile. And then this leads us to the next set of decisions that we need to make. And that's we're making an assumption that you want this to be a national search, correct? I assume so. So what we're going to want to do is get the word out in some key publications. There is a price to do that, and we weaved that into your budget, so no surprises. We've got those costs in there. What we recommend is that we post in the AASA. That's the AASA. Do I have that right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the National Superintendent's Organization. And their job bank, they will run it for 60 days for a price. We get really good results from there. Then we would like to make sure that people of color have ample opportunity to be looked at for this. We would like to be able to bring you what we think is a diverse slate. And there's 2 organizations that help us with that. I always get it wrong, but one is the African American
NAPSI.
NAPSI. Okay, got it. And the other is for Latinos.
Yep.
What's that one called?
Alas.
Alice.
Mhm.
So those are both national organizations that have membership from underrepresented groups, very good sources, and reasonable costs.
Mhm.
So what we would like your permission to do now that we are rolling with this is we'll get it up on the website for BWP, no cost, and we'll launch these 3 fee postings, and we'll get those up for you as soon as we can. Seeing
good.
some head nods. Everybody okay with that plan?
Yeah, just a question. Do you
Sure.
ever post on things like sites like LinkedIn? Because some of
I
us
forgot
do
about that.
share
Mhm.
weekly post.
Actually, our president, Mark Friedman, is the one that I know of who started doing that with great results.
Yep.
So I forgot. We will get some online presence with LinkedIn as well. Thank
I
you.
actually got
That
my
would be a-
first education position through LinkedIn.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, more and more it's becoming a
Coming out.
player.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I was just going to add, we will also be attending the what we call in Illinois Triple I Conference. So we'll make sure that we're advertising and talking and networking to potential candidates there as well.
Do you also post on the IASA Illinois?
Mhm.
The job
Job
bank,
bank.
You take care
That's
of
the
that for
other-
us? You
Yep.
take care of
Yeah,
that?
we're a member, so we
Yep.
do that.
Yep.
Good question, Brad.
Great.
Anything else on the postings? Well, you're doing really good. Let's keep it up. Let's keep going, Phil.
And then item G is compensation range. We're not asking you to give us a number tonight, but we are going to assume, unless you tell us differently, it's going to be some competitive salary in the area. We'll put together a comparison with
Comparables.
that. Is that correct?
Sounds good.
We can move with that. And then now we get to the fun part, the search timeline. So if you pull out the search timeline, and we've updated that since we first came to you, we can go down now to where we are in mid-October. And with Joe's assistance, we now have the vacancy notice posting ready to go, so we can check that off. The application system will go live on Frontline, which is used pretty much universally. We'll be doing that as well. During the week of October 21, which is next week, we would like to have board member phone calls. And so the assistance we would need would be to have the district office do a doodle or something to the board members. And we typically, is there anybody who would not be available in the late afternoon, evening? That work? for
I'm
everybody?
traveling Wednesday through.
We'll
For the
work
rest
with
of the
your
week.
schedule.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
will.
Yeah, we'll work with your schedule. It's not an issue at all, but we'll typically put that together
Mm-hmm.
and then give it back to us. And then those would be 30-minute board interviews we'll be doing over the phone.
I prefer daytime if possible, but
No, not
I'm
a problem.
also
We can make that
flexible.
work.
Like I can
No
make it
problem.
work, but ideally daytime.
Not a problem.
Not
Thank
a
you.
problem.
Just let them
And then
know.
we would divide those up, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
You'll
We'll
get a
divide
call
those.
So it
from
won't
one
be
of
all
us.
three. Yeah, you'll get a call from one of the three of us.
And then we'll do that next week. And then we have a little bit of a week there. We're not going to do a whole lot as far as involving you because we know you have a board meeting on the 28th. And then the 31st is Halloween. So I know a number of you are busy with that as well. So the week of November 4 is when we're suggesting to do the community engagement. And that's when we'd be working with the contact persons we just talked about for that. We'll be getting on that right away because we want to start to get that communication out there when we're going to do reminders and that type of thing as well. Is there any dates during that week of November 4 that we should stay away from? That is something that's major that may have an impact on the community engagement regarding the focus groups?
The 5th is election day.
Election day.
Well, yeah, we got that.
Mhm.
And
We
I've
have
got
our
something
committee
to say.
meetings at Monday. They were all pushed up in a month because it's Thanksgiving, because of the Thanksgiving break. And then we have an event on Friday night for our foundation.
How does November 7th, Thursday, look
7th.
for a day in the district? Most of it takes, well, it'll start in the afternoon and then we'll hit the teachers after school and hang around for the community in the early evening.
So my question is, what involvement does the board have with
That's a
this?
great
We don't-
question. We would ask the board not to be there
Okay.
just because of the dynamics of it.
Mhm.
So the board has no role in that part at all. We've already done the board interviews with
So
you.
you're just looking for events going on in the district that.
Right.
Exactly, Lisa. Thank you.
Homecoming, something, we want to stay away from anything big.
Is
in the
November
schools.
7 look pretty good? Going
Works
once,
well
going
'cause I'm
twice,
not
sold?
available.
BK, are you looking at the calendar?
I'm trying here.
Yeah, give him a second to review that.
The only thing I'm looking up, I see a choir festival with Hawthorne Schools at Vernon Hills.
On the 7th?
I think I'm on the right calendar.
So
So that night, where are you looking at both locations for schools, or what do you?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll do both locations.
Is it possible to do the 6th, Wednesday, the 6th at Vernon Hills and the 7th at LHS? Just because there is that, there's a fine arts event at
What
Vernon
time?
Hills on the 7th.
What time is that on the 7th?
It's
Brian?
usually 7?
I'm showing 7 to 8:30 on that night.
Could do 6.
I can't do the 6th. but
We,
If the
yeah.
bulk of it
we
is
typically try to
7.
go like 6:30 to try to be a little early. It's usually a half hour, so they could go to 6:30 and then go right to their concert. Wouldn't be a problem whatsoever
I don't
with
think
that.
I think it'll impact your
The
Your
amount of
attendance.
people.
there's a lot of people involved. It's not only our students, but it's all the center. Just,
Ah,
it's a group of students from the center district that combined with ours. You're going to have a lot of
So
parents and they're not going to want to do that as they're trying
If
to
it
drop their kids
doesn't
off.
involve the board, what about looking back at the week of the 28th? Because we have a board meeting Monday night, the 28th.
That would exclude people who like to go.
Why?
Well, we have a lot of people who like to go to board meetings.
Why would
Well,
it
they,
exclude them?
right. Well, because if they have
Focus
something,
groups.
it's a focus group at 6 o'clock.
6:30 or 6 o'clock,
Mhm.
something like that.
Not on the same day. I'm not saying do
Yeah, you could
the
do
focus
Tuesday or
groups on
Wednesday.
the 28th.
I thought you were saying
I'm
that
talking
Monday
about
night.
doing it on the 29th or 30th.
Gotcha. I thought you were talking about that.
No,
Monday.
no, no,
Back to
no.
the 7th and we'll do a
6
6th.
and 7.
How about if we do November 7 and November 6, we'll do one at
Vernon Hills.
Vernon Hills.
Yeah.
We can do that, no
Yeah.
problem at all. Bless you.
Will that work, district folks?
And what kind of facility are you looking for?
Usually there's a central locate somewhere in the district office for the principals to come by.
This-
and-
I think
Is he
he's
talking about,
for
are you talking about the
groups.
community?
School event.
Yeah, the community groups.
The
like
community
that.
group.
Seven.
A room like this?
Yeah, one
Like a
this.
media center, the commons area, we've done that as well.
Library, commons area. And if it's a smaller group, conference room. Just depends.
Let's move on.
And we'll start at 6:30 for both of those. Is that okay for both the 6th and the 7th? Or do you want to go with 6? It doesn't make a difference to us.
I think Bryant is just checking the facilities to make sure we have,
Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to do that right now, but
Okay.
we'll find something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
I would say 6:30 to make sure that. people get home
6:30.
From work.
got it.
6:30.
And then on December 9, you see there's some lag time there because we have the Triple I conference, Thanksgiving. On December 9, we would suggest that we provide the leadership profile when you have your meeting for the personnel and for the facilities group.
Mhm.
Does that work okay? And then December 12 would be the last day for applicants. And then during the week of the 16th, our team would conduct our interviews. And then we would, of course, have winter break. The first week after winter break on January 6th, we would do our workshop with the board and also present the slate of candidates that we've talked about, somewhere between 5 and 7 of those. So we need to pick a date during the week of January 6th. That would work for you. Typically, it would be about 2 hours.
I can tell
Jim,
you.
I saw you wincing. Is
Yeah,
that a
I'm
bad
out
week
that
for
whole
you?
week. I'm out of town.
I'm available that whole week.
We can Zoom if anybody can't make it.
Would you be available to do that, Jim?
What's that?
Could you Zoom?
Depending on the day and time.
What would work best for you?
I'm driving to Atlanta, so it's, Monday and Tuesday, I'll probably be in the car most of the day. So,
I have.
and I'm at a conference the rest of the week.
Uh,
I mean, yeah, we can come to, if I'm the only one holding things up, I'll find a way to jump on them.
I would prefer is there any way to compact the workshop with the board the week of January 13th?
It's up to you. I do have to advise you, though, it's a pretty grueling meeting and it usually takes a minimum hour and a half to 2 hours. We present all the candidates, we give you all their information, and then we work really closely with you to develop your questions and organize for round one. So if you don't mind that kind of workload added to a regular meeting, it doesn't matter to us.
Well, then I guess my next question would be, what are your thoughts then on doing the board workshop the week of the 13th and the interviews the week of the 20th? Just moving everything back a week so that the full board can attend.
We could do that.
It's
Yeah,
getting
we
really late. I
did.
mean, our original timeline was to be done by December. And now we're kind of edging into late January, so just.
Right.
But these are the finalist interviews, no?
Right.
So I'm not sure.
Well, it's both rounds.
It's both rounds?
hmm
Is there any way we could do one of them before we go for a break?
We had a schedule with that on there. That was a great question. The problem is if you have it just before winter break and then it's 2 to 3 weeks after that, it gets a little stale because of the candidates. So we were trying to keep it in that way so there wouldn't be that time lag in there. Because you can see we go pretty quickly intentionally because we wanted you to be fresh going from one to the other with that. Jim, what time will you be getting off the road? I'm not trying to be personal with you at all, but
I hadn't made a plan like that. That's not.
okay.
It was just a loose, I'm traveling with some other people too, so it'd be difficult to do.
I totally understand.
If we,
What if we did this, what if we did is it possible to do our January 6th workshop late in the week of December 16th, like the 19th or the 20th? Are you gone by then?
Yeah, that was my question, is there any?
But that
of this
leaves
we
you
could
the
do
16th
before?
through the 18th to do kind of your, that Thursday or Friday to do your paper screening. And then late in that week,
we,
if the application deadline ends on the 12th, that would, I mean, I know that's the 16th, 17th, but somewhere late in that week to do that workshop part.
I was gonna kind of push a little further, like you've got December 9th and December 12th. Is there any way for us to move both those up a week? I know there is Thanksgiving, but Can we move it, then December 9th becomes,
And the acceptance of applications a week early? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, just move it up. If we were to say your December 12th date equals December 9th, then what happens to the December 9th date? After.
I do want to just jump in here because we did have a schedule where everything was done before the holiday. And our team revisited that. And we weren't comfortable with the condensed time frame that caused. And then we tried to do a cost benefit analysis. What are we actually getting out of jamming this, forcing this in so hard? There are several other districts looking for superintendents, and those searches have gotten off much earlier than yours. So we really probably, even if we tried to move yours up and get all this in before December, those districts are probably still ahead a little bit. So in our business, there's a couple of waves. There's a first wave, which is get it all done in the fall and be done with it before December. But then a second wave comes, and that one is what we've presented here. We really think we were, again, measuring cost benefit, and we don't think we'll be severely losing any candidates to just stretch this out to the normal process. We were feeling that the application period was too condensed, the interviews and the training and the getting your questions all together, it was just feeling for us too condensed. So again, this is your search. We'll make it work however you want it. But I wanted to at least give you the rationale that we had it that way and we didn't like it. It just didn't feel right.
Well, I appreciate that. What we want is the best possible outcome. And if pushing this timeline back 1 week in January isn't going to adversely impact our candidate pool, then I'd like to go back to looking if we can make those dates work.
I personally, I won't speak for my team. I personally would rather have you look at moving things back in January than trying to do the reverse and getting them in December. So if you wanted to wait to have the presentation of the slate the week of January 13th, if that eases everyone's schedule, Lisa, I could tell you that will have zero effect on the number of candidates.
Then I think, I certainly want to give your colleagues a chance to contribute their input. But if that's the case, then I'd like to, let's look at that then.
So what,
Well, I was actually going to ask the opposite way, is the month between November 4th, week of November 4th and December 9th, is there a way to compress that? Why? I know we have 1 week of Thanksgiving. But
you have to
still 3
give
weeks.
people time to apply.
Well, I'm talking about leadership profile reviewed at board meeting. Can that be brought in to a?
But what's the advantage of
But how
moving
would that
up?
change? If we're going to let applications go to December 12th, moving anything before that wouldn't affect anything.
That would allow you to move your last day to apply equals the week before that.
So are you saying like then we would switch when we would interview candidates? Is that what you were saying?
Just trying to still stick, because everything that I have come to understand is the longer we wait, the candidate pool gets impacted. If people are starting to make decisions and getting offers in January, we've already lost candidates that have accepted other jobs. I'm just doing a timeline math here. So we're going to get the candidates who were not accepted in their first round if you go to January. If others are offering.
My understanding is if somebody gets offered a position in January, but they're being interviewed by us, they're going to tell that person they can't answer until they've finished the process with us.
as Joe said, I'd like to reiterate that there are 3 other searches going on right now that are high school districts in the area. And we've looked at a really what I would call a super compact schedule, and it just was not going to work. We don't get the return on our investment because we don't have enough time to be really out there networking to get the candidates that we want. The second calendar we looked like is trying to compact it and try to do some of this before, like to get the board interview like the week of December 16. But then you have a long period of time before you then get to the second round of interviews. And if the board does decide to do the advisory stakeholder group, you have a long time in there. So I would agree with what Joe said. I would rather, we'll compact our schedule and look at if January 6th doesn't work, we'll look at the week of January 13, trying to do that at the very beginning of that week so we can get some candidates to you as soon as possible after that. What does the week of January 13 look like?
I'm wide open. I would almost suggest that if there was a way to minimize the agenda items on the F&F and P&P for that Monday night, that maybe somehow we could compress that and have time, more time available for the workshop.
Which day are you talking about?
The
December
13th,
9th?
January 13th.
Oh,
So do the workshop and then they will do interviews that week.
So Becky, take it easy on them on that, for that meeting. And
That would work.
that would work for us,
Yeah.
and it would save you an extra night if you can keep it fairly light. We're happy to do it.
On do January 13th.
As long as we do the interviews first and then the PNP and others later, because I don't want to do interviews
this-
that.
This isn't
not
interviews.
the
This
interview.
isn't interviews.
This is the
reviewing.
presentation of the candidates.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
So we look at doing January 13. Do you want to do it?
Still do that first is
Yeah.
my thing.
You want to do it before the,
But you said it's 2 hours, right?
It's
So if
2
we were
hours,
gonna do
yeah.
Our regular 5:30, that would mean we'd have to be here at 3:30. I can't be here at 3:30 on the.
so
not-
what
No,
if
we'll
we
come
do
after your
five?
meeting.
Come after.
We do
We'd be
5
happy to come
PM?
after.
On the agenda at 5:30.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Whenever you're done, we'll.
okay, January 13 after your meeting. That's not a problem at all.
So wait, just, I'm not clear. So on the 13th, we would have a special meeting to meet with BWP in closed session for 2 hours. Could we start that at 5 and then do our committee meetings at 7? Does that work?
Push them afterwards, yeah.
Oh, I can be
I'm good.
here as early as 4:30, but I
Yep.
can't.
No, but
For
5, I
five.
think 5 is
Yeah.
reasonable.
No
I-
problem.
It's your call.
Yeah, and then we're fresh, like you were saying.
Right,
we'd
we
be
come in
for the
fresh.
Workshop and
Sure.
we'd be ready to.
So
Okay.
5
for the
o'clock.
other agendas.
5 o'clock, January 13th, presentation of the candidates and workshop.
And
I-
then,
I bet we could probably have some type of refreshments, right?
Certainly.
Wink, wink.
and then to Jim's point, if you want to then conduct interviews later in that week, then we're not really losing any time on the timeline.
Right.
Mhm.
So would the board be available to bounce off of what Victoria just said, to do interviews like on January? See, the board interviews for the first round, there's a lot of variations we can do. You can do like a Friday evening and a Saturday morning. You can do a Thursday evening and a Friday evening. There's a lot of combinations there. We really want to look at your schedule on what's going to work best for you. The one thing we need to keep in mind on the second night of the first round of interviews, you need additional time because we'll be providing training for you on how to come to a consensus on getting down from, let's say it's 6 candidates to 2 as an example with that. So it's really up to you on what's going to meet your schedule on when you would like to do that.
Assuming there's 6 that will present, most boards will do a 3 one night, 3 another. It's not overwhelming. Although just my last one that I helped organize, the board decided to do 2 Friday night and then 4 on Saturday.
Whatever the combination is. And
So
those-
you're
those that are-
looking for our availability on the 16th, 17th, and 18th. Is that correct?
Or that week, anytime.
Anytime that week. Lisa.
Are
16, 17,
we,
and 18, Lisa, would be
Yes.
the dates. that would
Okay.
be-
are we more interested in doing weeknight evenings or doing a Friday set? I personally prefer avoiding Friday nights and Saturdays, but I'm open that whole time.
I'm open as well. I'll be flexible. But I will say that if we have a national search and we have candidates who are traveling, it'll certainly be easier for them to come and meet with us on a Friday night or a Saturday.
Saturday. night.
Good point.
Especially because we have a quick turnaround. Once we slate the candidates at night, we have about 3 or 4 days to get candidates here. So
Also, the interviews, we recommend about an hour, and then you'll schedule them maybe an hour and 15 minutes, so you have a little chance to debrief and breathe. So it'll be, depends on when you want to start, but you want to start early enough so you're not going too late if you want to try to get 3 in there.
That round of interviews will all be done online, though, won't they?
Yes.
So they're not face-to-face. Nobody's going to travel during that time.
Oh, wait.
no.
No.
You're talking,
Those are
these are
face-to-face.
face-to-face
All
with all
of them,
6?
I misunderstood you. All are face-to-face.
Okay.
Even out-of-state candidates.
Gotcha.
Could I make a suggestion and we carve out 2 evenings and maybe Saturday morning and we see what the candidates, it could be that the candidates that we decide to bring in can't do the Saturday or they, just to leave some flexibility, but as long as we pencil those in on our calendar and we don't book anything for
Also, we might bring you 7 or we might bring you only 5.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So
I'm available all 3 of those days and I'm willing to leave them open.
So Jim, are you suggesting like a January 16, 17?
16,
in the
17 in the
evening,
morning of the 18th.
And then the 18th
Saturday.
in the morning?
I think
Sat-
that's a good idea because it's such a quick turnaround, making the, decision on the 13th and trying to get everybody in. I think it's a good idea to have 3 possibilities to
That
be
would
flexible
help
with
us
the
out a
candidate
lot.
schedules.
Great idea.
Make the arrangements.
Is that
Does that
okay
work
with
for everyone else?
everybody?
Yep. Everybody good?
We're almost to the finish line.
Oh, right.
One more decision to make.
And then we would need to look at then for the second round of interviews, and typically that's done, we go a lot more detail later on, but with the dinner, and then usually we have the candidate make some type of a presentation to the board. We suggest for both of these, first round, second round, they be done off-site. We can talk about location later. That's not a big deal at this point. So that would be then the week of the 20th. Again, you don't want to schedule it like on the 20th because you've just interviewed maybe on a Friday or Saturday night. You need a little time in there, but during that week, what would be best to have a slot in there for at least 2 finalists, and we may need a third in case that happens.
So each one gets a separate date and boards usually try to allot at least 2 hours for that one.
And those are typically evening.
Usually
Usually,
evening at a restaurant, private
Off-site.
room,
Private
find a
room.
place that has a private room.
Probably for the same reasons, we want to move those toward the end of the week, right?
It would be helpful.
I
if
think
It could
so.
be mid or
Good point.
later part of the week.
I mean, isn't it the better question, does anybody have a conflict the week of the 20th? Otherwise, we know that we're just going to keep the
Yeah.
schedule open the week of the 20th.
Just gonna-
I can keep that week open.
You get
Don't
that.
tell my wife, though.
Let's give them a go.
It's a good thing we're not live streaming.
How about if we do January 22 and 23, lock that into your calendars?
Mhm.
But also knowing that you're all flexible helps in case something happens with an out-of-state candidate or something along those lines.
Because I think that helps them too. It helps,
Yeah.
that way we have some flexibility. We're not telling them, no, you have to be here.
We don't have to plan this today, but some boards like to make the decision after the second dinner. And other boards like to have the 2 dinners and then come back and schedule a day to have a discussion. And again, if you guys keep that whole week free, I think we can work that out however you want to do it.
And then you notice we put a little bit of time in there between January 27 and February 14 to finalize the contract for 2 reasons. One, if we need to adjust the schedule, we have a little bit of wiggle room to do that. Secondly, when it comes down to that, when the candidate has their legal counsel looking at the terms of that. That takes time, the same it will do with your legal counsel as well. So we have that time in there with a little bit of flexibility for that reason.
And I will tell you, the board will be very interested in visiting that contract too.
Right,
I would hope so.
totally.
Yeah.
And our end time then we'd looking at would be the February 24 board meeting to do that.
Okay.
As Joe said before, I would say we're not really in the second round. We're in the mid between the first and the second round of the season of interviews. So we're well ahead of time of where we are with that as far as knowing where the candidates are going to stand with that.
Depending on where we are, we do have committee meetings on February 10th and could add a special meeting to approve the contract
Sure.
if we were ready.
We'll make a note of that just to have that. Yeah, that's a good,
That's nice for you and also the candidate.
mhm,
They'd be eager.
that's a possibility, yes.
And as a courtesy to the district that they're leaving.
Yes.
Yes.
Start the transition.
And then typically the new superintendent takes usually about 10 days of vacation days to come in and work with the transition with the current administration to make that a smooth transition with that.
Hey, I know this was grueling to make all these decisions right here on the spot, but this was so helpful and it went
Yes.
so smoothly because of your flexibility. And we now have everything we need to launch and we won't have to come back and bother you for anything. So this
Thank
was
you for
very,
coming.
very
Very
helpful.
helpful.
So what we'll do is update this timeline. Becky will send it to you. If you then get it out to the board and proof it as well, just to make sure, we'll do the same thing too. So we're on the
Update this
same
as
page
well.
with that.
Thank you very much for
Thank you
coming
very
and
much
we're
for your
looking
time.
forward to working with you.
We are
Thank
as
you.
well.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay.
And thanks in advance to Becky and Ray and your team, because again, especially with those focus groups, we're going to be bugging you a little bit. So thanks in advance for helping us out.
The logistics.
As interim superintendents, this is our fourth time doing this.
Okay.
So we're very happy to help you.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're- Then they're done that. Okay,
Have a good night.
thank you. We have one more item on the agenda for our special board meeting. That's the approval of a asbestos abatement contract for the LHS cafeteria. Dan, do you have any additional background you want to provide for this?
Nope, just what was written there. Great, we got 9 bids, 108,300 is the lowest responsive bidder. So that's great news for the project. And as you walk your way out, you can see there's temporary walls put up. It's started.
Okay, can we have a motion for this abatement bid?
Hessel, I move to approve the bid for asbestos abatement for the LHS cafeteria project with Nationwide Environmental and Demo LLC for an amount of $108,300.
Carmichael, second.
Any other discussion, comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Hold on.
Hold on.
Gotta wait for Carol.
Okay, no problem. Batson,
Aye.
Benjamin,
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey,
Aye.
Hessel,
Aye.
Cotwall,
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn, please?
Drunky, move to adjourn.
Benjamin second.
We need a roll call or a voice vote?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, do we need a 5-minute, 10-minute break? 5 minutes? All right, let's do a quick 5-minute break, and then we will come back.
Okay, we'll
For the
return at
Program and
6:35.
Personnel Committee.
Currently on break. 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 Currently on break.
Pledge of Allegiance. So I will ask now if there is anybody who would like to make a public comment. Ms. Jansen?
Hi, everyone. I sent an email to the board this evening, but you guys started so early and you had a lot on your plate. So I just wanted to share my thoughts just before you get started. Since we're underway with the 24-25 school year, I just wanted to circle back to some of my concerns that I had outlined back when I reached out to the board back in June and even before that. We've now passed the October 10th drop date for students. So I'm hoping that we have some useful and informative numbers that we can share about how our students are faring in light of the, less than smooth placement of last winter. So hopefully, now that we're actually coming on registration for next year, which is right around the corner, hopefully we can have some insight from some of the problems we had last time that will, put us on a better path for getting kids registered for classes that they belong. And then I know that Dr. Gilliam had shared some very, very rough numbers, some incomplete data about some students. I think he said 40 some at Vernon Hills were able to drop down as of the last board meeting. I don't know how many have asked to drop down, but I know he had said maybe 40 some had been accommodated. But I would love if we could get some information out to the community and to the board about how many drop requests we're seeing at each school. And by grade level, because I know, you all know my heart, the freshmen are near and dear to my heart and in terms of their placement. So I'd love to see what the numbers look like for freshmen that were requesting to drop down, and especially, comparing that to previous years. I'd also like to know how many of the requests were accommodated. So, as a percentage would probably be the most beneficial way of looking at that. And how does that compare to a typical year? I'd be curious to see what the requirements were for students to drop down. I just know anecdotally some students, friends, kids and things were given specific requirements that they had to accomplish in order to even be considered for drop down. So I think that would be interesting to hear for the board. And I'm guessing that math was a big one because I know we had that huge explosion in honors geometry placements, but I'm curious to see what courses and grade levels saw the most requests for drops and how the students' grades, now that we have first quarter grades for students, how their grades in their coursework compares to previous years. Are we seeing more C's and D's and God forbid F's? Or, how does that look compared to previous years? Just thought this information might be beneficial since we do have registration coming up in January, I believe. So just thought I would mention all that. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Franz. You guys know who I am. I'm going to speak a little off the cuff tonight. I wasn't really planning on speaking, but you guys know I spend a lot of time with students. And as I was reviewing the strategic plan update and kind of looking at the things that are kind of ongoing, I was happy to see that we're just continuing to work on these things and evolve. But One thing I really wanted to point it out, this week I had the opportunity to go to the volleyball game, the girls' volleyball game the other night. And as I looked out into a packed stadium full of kids, and I was watching the joy and the smiles and the fun that everybody was having, and I was thinking, you know, such a diverse crowd, and the crowd from Zion was going back and forth with the crowd from Libertyville, and it was just it was a great night, and it really made me think about, you know, how do kids see a lot of these things that we're talking about? How do kids think about inclusion? How do kids think about equity? And are they feeling a part of, are they kind of, are the first thing that we're thinking about as we do this? Or are we kind of looking at it more through the lens of adults? And so it also occurred to me as I was reviewing the response data from the SEL survey, I noticed something. On the open-ended questions, when the kids were asked, what in your life makes you feel the happiest right now? There's not a single thing on that list that has anything to do with school. It's about friendships, family, athletics, hobbies, free time, music, lots of things, but no school things. And on the answers for what things in your life feel the hardest to you, almost all of the things on there are things about school, applying for college, time management, organization, grades, worrying about my future. So I want you to kind of think about that as we start to move forward and we think about our strategic plan and what we're, you know, how we're adjusting to things. This is what our kids are talking about. This is what matters to them. So as we start thinking about creating new goals for that plan, maybe we need to really make sure there's some academic goals on there, that there's more goals about supporting kids in the areas that they feel the most stressed by right now. So thank you for considering.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, seeing none. Yeah, okay, we're going to move along. We're on item 3 now for discussion. The board policy second reading. We're in the process of reviewing our board policies as they were updated by press. There are 5 different policies that we've already gone through in our first reading. Is there any comments or discussion about these, or are they ready for adoption at our October meeting?
I think they're good.
Okay.
I kind of have one question that I would like to apply anytime we're talking about policy. And I think, how does this change what we're doing now? By adopting what press is recommending, what does that look like to our district and what we're doing now?
It's a really good question. What's the impact? Most of these are changes that either reflect something in the law or their nomenclature changes. As I reviewed them, there was nothing that was really substantive in these particular ones. That's not to say that there might not be in some others. But as you look at these are more revisions to just bring it more into line.
I saw that, but I kind of want that to be a part of our conversation when we're talking about that. This is how we apply this currently, and with this change, this is what we would see the practical change by applying, by applying these changes. This is what it looks like in practice. So I'd like us to start at least.
Good lens to think of it.
It's a good idea.
Huh?
It's a good lens to look at them through. Yeah, good way to think about it.
So nothing substantive in these policies.
I did have one question about policy 5100, the staff development regarding trauma responsive learning environments and the whole child. We were required to do that at the beginning of the year. I was just wondering how that went, because that's new.
So our trauma response, any of our training is done through Public School Works, our online training. And so that would all be pushed out to our staff on the online training. So it's not like a training that we did, with them in person.
Okay. And go ahead, Becky.
So it's standard training that we are
Correct, yes.
contracting
Yeah.
for.
So we
to make
contract with
sure-
the service, and anytime there's laws that are changed in the state of Illinois, that service gets the changes from the state of Illinois, and then we adjust our training as needed.
And then how much time are teachers given to do that?
they do that on their own time. So there isn't time for them during the day to say, okay, today everyone's got an hour to work on their training. So they'll get the trainings and they can do that on their own time. So again, trainings for administrators, support staff, and teachers are all, on their time that they have to do that.
Okay, so then that raises the question. It says, unless I'm reading it wrong, it has to be done before the first student attendance day of each school year. Was there an exception granted for this year?
Which,
That's a good question. Since this came out in August of '24, we'll find out about the timing of that. That's a good question.
Okay.
We'll find out what it was this year and we'll let you know.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Strategic plan update.
Yes, thank you. Tonight, I'm providing a very brief update of the strategic plan. Speaking on behalf of Mr. Ben Rodriguez, Mr. Larry Varn, and Dr. Jessica Herman, each one of them lead one strand of our strategic plan. They've been working with our staff over the past 2 months and have compiled this information for me to share with the board tonight. I do want to say, just before we start on the specific strategic plan update, we are coming off our full day, October 11th, all staff in service, which we had last Friday. Though not directly addressed for the entire day, some of the elements of working with students who have experienced trauma was part of some of the discussions and some of the focus for the day. The entire day, Ms. Franz spoke about kind of students and how they feel in our system, especially with the SEL survey. The whole day was focused on health and well-being and students' sense of belief and belonging in our schools. And we did look at the SEL data. That very same information was shared with our staff, that things students find most enjoyable and things students find least or most difficult in their life. And the whole focus of our day was thinking about ways to make school more enjoyable, supportive, a place of belonging for our students. So at a subsequent time, we'll probably have updates about that work as well. Some of that connects, actually quite a bit of that connects directly to our strategic plan. So just as a quick reminder, Dan, thank you. Dan is my remote tonight. I appreciate that. But just kind of to reference, the strategic plan was developed as a way for our school community to unite in efforts to actualize elements of our daring mission. And as the plan was developed, these are the 3 primary areas of focus that emerged to guide our efforts and actions. So health and well-being, very much how do our students experience school? How do our staff members experience school? What do we do in order to ensure District 128 schools are places where all students can be healthier and happier? Equity and inclusion, how do we unlock the potential that is within our system to make sure everyone is feeling welcomed, respected, included in the work of the district, and that have full access to achieve their potential to our programs and our systems. And then exploring multiple paths, how do we make sure that all students have the opportunity to pursue their personalized journeys to their post-secondary plans. And those are all made up, those 3 areas are all made up of staff and administration. We have committees that represent each one, and they coordinate all of the work that we're conducting. So in July, when there was a separation with our previous superintendent, you as a board asked, well, you were aware that the staff in District 128 felt the pace and the volume of the change happening across the district was not well coordinated nor sustainable. And you asked our administration what efforts we could pause and what our priorities would be this year for our work. So at that time, our administrative team was able to determine some of those efforts that we could pause and adjust. But Bryant and I explained that we could not speak for the strategic plan at that time because we needed to meet with those teams. These all of these committees are run by people who were away for the summer. And so we were not going to speak on behalf of those committees until they returned. So since we've been back in August, what I'm going to report out tonight is how those committees have met and how they have made recommendations for the updates. I'm very happy that our committees have been very invested in this work and have done very thoughtful work about what could their individual committee do this year and how does that fit into the other work that is happening across our district. So just a quick view of the process. Thank you, Dan. You're on. Got it. You understood that kind of request that Bryant and I made, and you provided us that time. So during the month of August and September, two specific things occurred. First, we sent out invitations asking staff members to let us know if they wish to continue serving on their committee or if they wanted to switch. We also asked if there were new staff members who wanted to join any of these committees. After the membership of the committees was determined, they met and they reviewed all of the committee's strategic priorities and actions that had been in place since about 2022. And the committee asked itself, okay, which of these actions are our highest priorities? And what can we as a committee reasonably accomplish this year? And how does this connect to the other work happening in our district? So after working through these questions, each committee created a revised list of their priorities, actions, and timelines that I'm sharing with you and tonight. These are shared with our district administrative team, and we're in the process of evaluating these recommendations along with the other work that's being done, such as a superintendent search, a principal search at Vernon Hills, to make sure that we're not biting off more than we can chew, that we are respecting the fact that our staff is pulled in multiple directions. And we want to make sure that all of the work we're doing is work that has a direct impact on our students and our system, but is sustainable and manageable for the system as we go through these transitions this year. So tonight, I just will share that. And I just want to say thank you to all the staff members who have volunteered to serve on these committees. We're grateful for their work and their investment of time, energy, and leadership. So what you have to remember is each one of these committees are voluntary. So a staff member is going to look at this and say, I have a passion for helping our students explore multiple paths. I want to join that committee. And what they're signing up for is they're signing up for multiple meetings to kind of set a plan, but then also do work to help advance that, the goals of that committee and coordinate action across our district. Depending on the committee and what its work is, that could be anywhere from weekly to monthly meetings that they are doing on top of all their other responsibilities. We very much value the input of the committees and the input of the staff members who are on there to guide the work. And so we just want to really emphasize and appreciate the time and energy that is put into helping advance our district's strategic efforts. Okay, so when we look at this first group, Exploring Multiple Paths, this is the group who is on the committee this year. It is, all of our committees are composed of members of our ESP, our certified staff, and our administration, building and district, working together collaboratively. This committee is led by Mr. Ben Rodriguez. And when this committee met, they basically kept the same three strands that they've had last year. So this committee is divided into three strands. Each member of the committee sits on one strand. So they have a planning strand, an exploration strand, and a diploma plus strand. The strands are the same as last year, but essentially through the prioritization process, each one of these strands kind of selected one big objective to focus on this year and some of the key tasks that fit under that objective. So for the planning strand, it's really to create and implement a universal curriculum for academic planning and for college readiness. So this work here is the work that they are focused on. it started this year with them implementing what we're called the 4-year, when that curriculum is done, it will be called the Daring Journey. And it will be connected to a series of benchmarks aligned to students starting as freshmen, moving through high school, all students across our district having some of the same touch points and experiences to help them prepare for post-secondary options. So what this committee did was said, we're implementing the first year of that with our freshmen and elements of that with our sophomores. Daring Day that happened last Thursday was the big kickoff to that Daring Journey. And the second thing this group is doing, as you know, is we have school links, and we're looking to begin to roll that out for our as a course guide that will be available to all families this year. Where this committee where this strand sort of slowed down their work was there was discussion about potentially building out more stages of the Daring Journey and using school links for the academic course selection process. And we have determined this year to not move forward with those things this year. Just that will start next year, but not to pursue that this year. In the exploration area, that is us looking at systemic approach to career exploration. So what this group is doing is we've created some career treks, we've created career speakers coming in. And so rather than, and we've also created our workplace internship class. This group is making sure that all of those efforts are being well understood, publicized, communicated, and that families and students know how to take advantage of all of these opportunities. The Diploma Plus group, they are looking at the career pathways that we're building and advancing the partnerships for dual credit in our district. And this year we have 2 career pathways. Rather than work to build out more career pathways this year, we're holding with just those 2, refining our efforts there. And then next year we would pick up the creation of more of our career pathways. In equity and inclusion, these are the staff members who are on that committee. Again, representative of ESP's administration and certified staff. When we look at our work there, we have 5 strands. I'm not going to go through all 5 for the time tonight. But essentially what we've done there is we've really tried to focus our equity work this year and inclusion work around evaluating and supporting the efforts that are being made with our diagonal movers, with our students who are entering advanced placement and honors classes for the first time, with our students who are accessing courses that are new to them. And we're really taking a look at how are we supporting our educators with building out their Tier 1 instructional strategies for culturally relevant teaching, for SEL kind of support and instruction, and for differentiation for a broader bandwidth of students in their classes. So a lot of the things we're doing in the lab, a lot of the things we're doing with our 9th grade college prep, the things we're doing with our special education students who might be involved in co-teaching or in some of our tutorial classes, our new pause design, all of that is the focus of our groups. And part of that is meeting with student focus groups, asking our students directly how they are perceiving these changes, how they are feeling as part of these changes. Where this committee sort of slowed down a little bit was that a lot of the initial tasks were going to be to begin to build kind of 2nd and 3rd stages of this work this year. For example, to not only conduct focus groups with students and focus groups with community members, but then to actually have steps forward in building out programs for next year. This year, the focus is much more on evaluation and on deepening the work, taking a look at what is here, getting a real good assessment of how it is working and playing out, and then working through the summer and early next fall to start to create recommendations for longer term changes. That's not to say that some of the short term things around our school placement process and things, the course registration, course selection. Those things will have some changes that we'll bring forward this year. But some of the larger programmatic changes will take a little more time to review prior to building out the next steps in that. With our health and well-being, we have a group of staff members here who are working to coordinate health and well-being efforts that are focused on student and staff. We've really got 3 focus areas for this group. Student social emotional learning is really focused on looking at the MTSS framework that we are building out in our district. So we've had MTSS, but we've taken some steps to better organize that framework this year. And what they're looking at is what is the actual explicit learning we are going to provide to students around social emotional skills. It's as those of you in education know, the state of Illinois has standards for social emotional learning. They are the same as the CASEL standards. As a school, we're taking a look at where are we currently meeting those standards and what ways can we become even more organized and systemic in providing those and ensuring that students have multiple exposures to those over their 4 years of high school. The digital citizenship and well-being strand is really trying to connect to some current thoughts that have been voiced both in our school buildings and at the board table around student use of digital devices. That group is going to take a look at our current policies and practices. They're going to look at student feedback on our digital policies and practices. They're going to look at research around this and some best practices, and they anticipate coming to the schools and the board in the spring to offer either support for current policies or recommendations for changes that could be made to better support students and staff. And then staff wellness is a group of staff members who is working to think about the District 128 professional environment and what types of things can be done to better support the health and well-being of our staff, both from an HR standpoint and from a culture point, kind of community and culture point with actions that we can take in school as well. So all of these groups have met in September and in August. All of these recommendations are now kind of coming forward. They're at the board table to get your feedback. Our district leadership team is working to make sure that these are all in line with the other projects we're doing this year. And then throughout the rest of this year, we would have presentations to you as a board about how those efforts are progressing and some of the information that we're learning as these various committees continue their work.
Great, thank you. Comments, questions?
I just have one comment. As you mentioned, you'll be coming back to us with some results of some of the activities that are going on this year. Some of these I recognize as being requirements, like the career pathways, There's requirements by ISB to have so many of those in place at certain points in time, some of the SEL stuff. Is there a way that you can weave into some of your report out as to what to ensure that we're following not only what our plan is, what our, based on our strategic plan, but actually those things that we're obligated to do and that, to ensure that we're actually accomplishing those.
Yes, yeah, that's a great point. Because whether it's a state requirement or board policy, many of these areas of focus are either a mandate or a requirement or a guideline that we are to follow. And we want to report out on how we are making progress with those things. And so like many of these are tied in with our racial equity and inclusion policy that we have as a board. Many of them are tied in with different aspects of IDEA and some of the different aspects of that. We have the state, all of our EL and bilingual requirements that we follow, as well as you said, with the college and career readiness indicators. So where we can kind of connect to those things that we're doing. And that's really what I want to highlight is we didn't stop our strategic plan. We're not saying we're not going to do our strategic plan. We value our strategic plan. This was created by our district. It was created by our school community. And these 3 areas of our strategic plan are very important to us because they underlie our daring mission. What we are doing, though, is some of the things that we had, we might have, for an objective this year, we might have had like 6 or 7 key tasks we were going to do, and an objective was going to be pursued at a level that would require multiple staff members doing multiple things over the course of the year. Most of the adjustments we made, all of the objectives are still important to us and we're pursuing those, but we are reducing the amount of tasks that we are going to take to not only meet the objective, but to go beyond and build it out. We're giving ourselves a little more time we kind of focused on what is the here and now that we need to implement this year. To your point, what are the things we have to do? What are also the efforts that we've got going so far? We don't want to hit the brakes on them because so many people have been invested in them. We need to keep it rolling to finish it out. And then rather than start new things on top of it to deepen some of that work, where are the pause points we can take this year so we can really evaluate how this is working, and we can give people a chance to catch their breath while they focus on the work they want to do with students in the classroom.
I think the equity journey is also something that the
That is
state
correct.
is
The state of
requiring
Illinois,
us. It's on our
School report
report card.
Yes, right. So
So we are attending to these things that are not necessarily generated from within.
yes. And what's beneficial to us as a district, which is not the case in all districts, but something I'm very proud of, and I think many of you understand, is as a district, we have taken time to look at what are all of those mandates and not do those in addition to our strategic plan, but exactly to weave those into our strategic plan. Those things are important to our state, they're important to our board, they're important to our community. So we should be thoughtful in our actions about the work that we're doing with our students needs to be reflective of that and should not be, here's our strategic plan and 50 things we're doing, and then here's all these other mandates we have to do on top of it. We are trying to be thoughtful, and where we see overlap, connect those two things.
Great.
And I just wanted to amplify before we move on to anything else. I agree, especially for somebody who's not an educator, it is helpful to see which of these things are in fact part of the state mandate work, because it's not obvious to everyone.
I have a couple of questions. I'm gonna maybe start behind, but if you look at the health and well-being slide, under your digital citizenship and well-being, I'm assuming you will also include the use of AI technology as part of that.
That, but perhaps. So where the committee was starting from was more in line where they were really focused in this year on a lot of the information that was coming forward, for example, in the book, The Anxious Generation, and the amount of time students are spending on screens, phones, and social media. And so taking a look at some of our existing policies and practices around phones usage in classrooms and what might need to be done to address some of those practices and policies. That's not to say those committees, though, as they begin to do their work, may not say we need to also look at AI. Last year, as you know, we had a preliminary, we put together our district policy, not a policy, but a position statement on AI. I don't know if this group, I don't want to speak for them, if they will really dig deep into that. Their initial conversations were more about social media and how much screen time students have access to during the school day. And then what types of information would families need in order to support better student health and use of social media and screens at home as well.
Tom, would you say AI falls more into the curricular than it does the health and well-being?
Yeah, I think both overlap. I mean, how we're using, access to cell phones in class could qualify. Sometimes we do use our phones for curriculum aspects, But I think that there are groups in our district that, like our instructional coaches, our department chairs, our classroom teachers, might be evaluating new AI tools. When this group was focused initially, they weren't necessarily thinking about AI as a tool. They were thinking more about the impact of social media and screen time on student mental health.
Just on that topic, IASB had a webinar 3 weeks ago. I attended. If anyone didn't attend that, I believe that the recording of that is available on the IASB website. It was very interesting. It was a sort of discussing the whole landscape of AI in the school setting. So it's a good watch, about an hour.
Thank you. My second question is when it comes to the SEL survey, between previous years and this year's, what do you see stood out as a change? And was that going in the right direction or was it not?
Yes. So we're very happy to see that our student SEL in virtually all categories that we report out on has increased, and that is increased since 2022. So as we came out of the pandemic, we were certainly very worried about all of our students, and our SEL data was strong, but it was reflecting lower scores than we're getting now. And so we are seeing a uptick in all of the panorama measures of student SEL. And anecdotally, I think we are feeling that as well as a staff. I think staff started to feel last year that they were starting to sense kids feeling a little bit more resilient, a little stronger, a little healthier than they had been directly in the years right after we had the COVID pandemic. I think there was no area that really jumped off the chart as significant increase or significant decrease. Where we saw two areas that are influencing our work right now is our students as a whole tended to score lower in growth mindset. So in their belief that they can change, in their belief that with time and practice, they can acquire new skills and new learning and grow their intelligence, was a relatively lower area for us, even though we were still in the 80th to 99th percentile nationwide among high schools in that area. And then the other one was self-efficacy, in the idea of I can take control of my learning. I will remember this information a year from now. I do meaningful work for me. Those are areas that we began even discussing with our staff on last Friday's Institute Day about how do we create classrooms that build student efficacy and sense of efficacy and their growth mindset.
Okay.
Other-
I just have one more, if you don't mind going to equity and inclusion. Just wanted to think many of the systems we are setting up, those really apply to the entire student body, right? They're not just intended for a specific racial group or anything like that. So just a recommendation, maybe we shouldn't mix those two up, because then I think the community feels like we're doing all of this just for the sake of diversity and inclusion, and I don't believe that's the case.
What should we
services-
not mix up?
Like the systems that the labs that we have, the diagonal movement that we've had, this is for all of our students. They're
Yes.
not intended for any particular student group. I think by adding some of those into the equity and inclusion slide, I think gives a perception that all of this is being done for a small group of students, which I know is not the case.
Right. That may be more on our need to help our community understand our equity and inclusion work, because it is about all students all the time. What we do is, as you know, we look at our data and we look at our outcomes and we look at results of our programs and we say, how is this impacting the whole? And then we begin to disaggregate that data and look at specific subgroups. And when we look at our different subgroups, there are times when we may target a specific subgroup for an additional support. There's times when we target students who have an IEP. There are times when we may target our female identifying students. There are times when we may target our first generation college students. So a lot of those individual efforts are sort of singled out, and we're going to talk about those and we're going to evaluate those, but they fall under the umbrella of equity and inclusion, because what we're doing as a district is making a commitment that when we say District 128 is an excellent school district for all students, we can look every single parent in the eye, depending on how they identify and how their child identifies, and say, we are an excellent school for this child as well, right? And so I think equity and inclusion is the big umbrella for all students. And then within equity and inclusion, there are times when we're going to talk about specific subgroups of students and the efforts we're making to support them. I hear your feedback that sometimes people think we're only focused on a specific population, a specific subgroup. We as an administrative team have talked about that as a way to say, how do we in our reports help provide our community more information about the efforts we're taking to support all of our students, while at times we do need to report out to you how we are focused in on specific subgroups of kids that we're making specific efforts towards.
Yeah, my feedback wasn't how you're communicating it and not the actual work itself. So.
Yeah. Well, there's no question that continues to be an important focus for us, is all students in our district feeling like that was our October 11th. Our theme was belief and belonging. How does every single student at District 128 have a sense that they believe they can be successful in our classrooms, in our educational spaces, and they also believe they truly belong. And we were talking about everybody, all of our students, because that is our equity work, is to make sure when we say all, that we mean all.
Anything else? All right, and I would just like to thank all of the members of the committees, all the teachers, support staff, administrators who are giving up extra time that they could be doing something else, and doing the work, the hard work that the district needs to do to move forward. So thank you to all of you.
And I just want to add, I can't speak for everybody on the committees. My general sense, I sat in on all three. What my general sense was last year, there was a feeling among the committees of it's too much and we can't manage all of this. Well, this is just my personal, I didn't do a survey to get this info, but my personal feeling this year that I got in those rooms where people were energized and excited about the work that they were going to do and felt that it was meaningful and manageable and would move us forward in very important ways. So I think that was a very big perception change just that I experienced between last year and the start of this year.
Good. Karen?
I just want to echo my colleagues here and my thanks for having this all prepared for the update. I did have one question regarding the website and the link to the strategic plan on the district website. I know there were concerns in the past about keeping all of this updated, especially the progress page, which kind of serves as a dashboard for where we're at in the process. And certainly there have been many things going on in the district, and this may not be at the forefront of anyone's to-do list, but I think it would be helpful for community to kind of know where we are in our process, that our eye is kind of on the prize of completion ultimately. And currently, in its current iteration, the website progress page really only features percentages toward completion of each of our strategic plan areas. What it does not do, which I personally would find helpful, is it does not connect any of our goals that we've outlined to our progress. So you can't see, well, sure, you can see that strategic plan progress under, let's say, health and well-being, we're at a 5% toward our progress goal. But we can't really, unless I'm misreading this, we can't really see what has been done, like demonstratively, what goals or what pieces of the goal were met. For me, as a future parent, and just as anyone curious about the strategic plan, where we are on our journey, I feel like it would be really helpful to be very specific about what we've done and where we intend to go.
Absolutely. And I think Mary may want to address that.
Yes, if I may. The strand leaders and I have been meeting with a couple of different resources to improve that page. We're working, actually, we have proposals from the artist or the graphic designer who did the strategic plan page, which everyone seems really happy with. So we're hoping that it can look more like it's aligned with it, and also have it work with the Qualtrics piece that we worked to get the data that you see on there now. We're also looking at a company called Invisio that does strategic plan dashboard pages just for libraries, schools, governments. So we actually had one meeting this afternoon, and we're going to be talking to DLT to see how we can improve that.
And that's not to say I have to mention that the rest of the site actually looks excellent.
Well, thank you.
So don't take what I'm saying as to be a complete criticism.
Not at all.
In this area of the actual progress and seeing where we're at, I would love for more color, more depth, more detail, and not in terms of like aesthetics, but like information wise.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
As long as we're talking about that, one of the things that I'd like to, and I really appreciate all of the work and the committees coming together to create a plan that is more attainable, that they're comfortable, because it's just going to be better work if they're not feeling overwhelmed. But I kind of go back to our conversation that we had in June of 2022 when we originally created the strategic plan. And the district, through all of those community focus groups, created 12 goals. And out of those 12 goals, we identified the 3 of the priorities, which became our strands for our strategic plan. But we had a long conversation about these are our 12 goals. And we are high achieving in many of those areas, but they're not to be lost on. But we have not really revisited those goals since June of 2022 because we've been talking about other things. And kind of leads me to, if we're talking about creating this web page or a page on the website that shows our strategic plan, I think we need to honor that we did identify those 12 goals. And of those 12 goals, academic identity, assessment of the daring learning, assessment and grading, high impact instruction. We talked about all of these things and that those are our goals for our district. Do we still feel like those goals have been met, and how are we meeting them? As some kind of honor that work was done also, and include it with our strategic plan. I don't know what that looks like, but I think that would, I know for me, it would give a better picture of, yes, these are our priorities, but that is not, because we had that conversation. That's not to say that we have met these goals in all areas, and we continue to work on those goals, and these are still a part of our goals, but these are our priorities.
Okay, yep.
But
So
that's
noted.
me.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next item, which is employment of employees. Brian?
These are a few employment items that are some coaches and some educational support staff items that will go for approval at the board meeting.
Nothing else there? Okay. A superintendent's report. I'll turn it over to Becky.
Thank you. The first item is the fall 2024 SEL survey results. I think we've heard all of that. I had a little summary here. You've gone much better into that than I have, so we'll pass on that and move on. I do have for you a Title IX update that I think is significant. This has been an item that's been on our agenda, and the Title IX audit, I can tell you, is well underway. A great deal of information has already been collected and shared with Priya Bocek, the attorney's firm that is doing this audit for us. This includes game and event schedules for each district activity, practice schedules, records of upgrades of facilities, financial reports, and many, many, many more things. They conducted athletic department interviews and building tours last week, including a 2-hour building tour of facilities with the athletic director. They interviewed athletic trainers, athletic directors, assistant athletic directors. They interviewed several of the coaches. So again, gathering much data for this audit that is taking place. Moving forward, in the next few days, student representatives selected by the audit team will be interviewed, and parent representatives from both schools will be contacted and have an interview meeting via Zoom. Also, the Title IX audit team will conduct interview meetings with the fine arts and activities directors for both schools. So as you can see, this audit is well underway. It's comprehensive. They are on point to finish and to give us details of this report by December. That is the point at this point in time. So that's about the Title IX audit. Regarding the 24-25 support plan, this is a multifaceted plan just for this academic year that we have drafted. You have seen the draft of that. You've seen the objectives. And now the timelines, all of the plans for each of those to be implemented are in place. They're all going to be worked on for this year. One of them will be a 2-year goal, as you know, but we anticipate that we are on point for finishing those this year. And finally, as far as the Vernon Hills High School principal situation is concerned, I have been unsuccessful in tearing up John Gilliam's letter of retirement, unfortunately. Therefore, the plan to conduct the principal search has been drafted. The district leadership team is going to be reviewing the timeline and some of the data for that tomorrow. Time-wise, we are right where we should be in the process. So that's where we are, and that's the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Okay, under future agenda items, there is one thing that I would like to bring up, and that is the IASB resolutions. At some point, we need to advise our representative to the delegate assembly what we think about each one of those items. Carol did send that to everyone. I thought that next week she could give all of us the sheet that's on page 22-ish that has little check marks over yes and no. If we could each go through those and mark them, then we can do that at the November P&P meeting so that Jim will have that in time to bring it to the delegate assembly. Oh, you all got those. Okay. Got it, right. So that page right there. So Carol, we don't need them. You have them already. You're way ahead. So then we can run through a quick discussion of those items.
So you'll be looking for each of us to have completed it so we can come to consensus?
Yeah. Okay.
My only agenda item, I think, Becky, you probably know what I'm going to ask, but I have a list of items that I'd like to cover and discuss, and I'm still looking for a plan on some of them. So when do you think we'll have an update?
Well, now that we have some of the things in place relative to searches and some other things going on, we'll definitely pay attention to that. Thank you. I think we've had some answers to some of them, and we're looking at those, and we'll get the answers for the other ones.
Can you clarify?
Sonal had sent some questions that she had relative to a variety of topics, a variety of things, and we've gathered some data and information to respond to those, and there are some that we're still gathering some information on.
Yeah, and I will say that I'm new to this process because I'm just now coming into seeing some of those things, so trying to help navigate some of that as well. So just give us a little more time.
Okay. All right, well then I'm going to adjourn this meeting and pass it over to Dr. Batson.
I'd like to call the Facilities and Finance Committee to order. We have another invitation for public comment. Anyone wanting to address the Facilities and Finance Committee? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Have a few items on the agenda here. Disposal of equipment. There's a list here. I think it's pretty standard. Anyone have any concerns or anything with these? The disposal of the marching band uniforms. I saw a picture of the new ones. They look very sharp. The item B, FY State Maintenance Project Grant. It's a $50,000 grant that we apply for every year. Dan, any Comments on this?
It hasn't normally been a grant you get every year, but every
No.
year they keep releasing it. So it's, at this point, I think a lot of us are assuming they're going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And so this is a $50,000 matching grant. We've been using this towards offsetting the cost of our roof replacements that we've targeted for this, for the following summer. And so that's again what we're doing. So the board is required to approve this application. It also has to be something that we haven't bid yet. So it can't be a project that you're already doing and just kind of tack it on. And so that works really well with our timeline for summer projects that are getting presented for the next year. So it's roofs 1, 3, 12, and 13 that there's information in the packet there for you to see what those roofs are. But that's what we're recommending continuing to go with.
Okay, and we'll vote on this at the board meeting later in the month.
Yes.
Any questions, comments? Okay, 2024 estimated tax levy.
All right, if I can get the screen back, please. Hold on one second. Let me share this. So we have, this is a $100 million conversation. So what we've been doing with our levy is kind of an every other year cycle on 1 year. And it usually started with after we got a slate of new candidates come to the board. We had a pretty in-depth in terms of a how-to of a levy, what goes into a levy, and to help understand. And then in the off year, it was more of a brief overview and then just really getting to the nuts and bolts. We are in an off year for that, so I'm going to just briefly go over some things and then share with you some real data. So I'm just going to briefly touch on these 6 things here: our funding sources, property tax cycle, CPI, PTEL, EAV data, and levy. We like acronyms in education. So just a quick reminder, and we want to make sure we have this every year so we understand. In general, in the United States, what you find in terms of how schools are funded, what you find most often is the state and the local community split the cost and the federal government kicks in some of the money. That's what you find in general around the United States. In Illinois, there is more of an emphasis on the local community. So property taxes in Illinois are higher on average than what you might find elsewhere because of that's just how the structure is for Illinois. And then in D128, 88% of our revenue comes from property taxes. 95% of our revenue comes from the community right around us. When you add in registration fees and then interest income, things like that. So the property tax levy has a massive impact in terms of how the district gets the resources to operate. Excuse me. So then on the property tax cycle, there are really 2 processes that happen. There's an assessment process where the township assessors are trying to figure out, then it goes to a county level for approval. What are the values in our district? And then the levy process is then what do we do as a district to tap into that value and convert it into revenue? So the goal of the assessment process is to figure out the EAV. That's an acronym for Equalized Assessed Value. That basically is a third of fair market value. So if you look at the EAV, I think most of the people living here, you probably got your valuation slips. That tells you what your assessed value is. And that's of the taxable properties, because the reality is not everything in our district is taxable. Like we don't pay taxes on Libertyville High School, thank God. So not every properties are taxable. And then the levy again converts that EAV into revenue. So one thing that we like to remind is the term levy. Levy is the amount of dollars that you're requesting. So we don't request a tax rate. We don't request some other states have things like mill rates. We don't request a rate. We request a dollar amount. And then the extension is the dollar amount that you're approved to get. That is not even necessarily the dollars you actually get, because not everyone pays their taxes. Almost everyone does, but not everyone. And so the other thing to remind is when we're talking levy, we say levy, but technically it's several levies. The most common ones are going to be educational, operation, maintenance, transportation. These are levies for particular purposes, but we end up combining them into the levy, but it technically is different separate levies. Truth in taxation is an important law every year. So what this says is at least 20 days before the adoption of the levy, the board must estimate the levy. And if that estimate is showing that you're going to ask for more than 105% of what you got last year, so more than a 5% increase, then you have to have a public hearing. You have to put a notice in the paper and you have to have a public hearing. If it's less than that, you can still have a hearing, but it's not required. This didn't usually matter because inflation was so low for so long that we never would request something even close to a 5%. But with inflation that was pretty high over the last few years, we hit that, and we had 2 years where we did have to post the notice in the paper and go through those processes. The good news is I don't foresee that being required for this time around. CPI, so that's a term that we basically call inflation. It's Consumer Price Index, and if you get nerdy about it, it's the CPIU index. And actually what it really is, it's the percentage change in the index. So the index one year was X dollars, and then the year after that, it was a different dollar amount. What was the percentage change in that index? That's what CPI is. So it's technically the December to December percentage change in CPI. You can see over the last few years, the average is roughly around 2.8-ish. But a few years ago, we had extremely high CPI, 7% and then 6.5%. And as I'll show you under the tax cap, you're limited by 5%. So even though CPI might be 7 or 6.5, the law caps it at 5%, can't go any higher than that. This year, the CPI, I think, was 3.4, so definitely under the 5%. Cap in terms of what you're allowed to be extended, and also plenty of room so the truth and taxation hearing is not required. So CPI, again, more essentially is the rate of inflation. 10-year average is 2.8%. Now this is something that I track on a monthly basis, but really showing back in the 2000s when we were having, this is looking at how I said it was December to December. I look at this each month to see how did it change from the prior year ago. And we've seen CPI come down considerably back into somewhat normal ranges. And this last one was 2.5. And actually, I think the one that just got released maybe last week was 2.4. So we've seen inflation really come down over the last year. So PTEL, that's also referred as the tax cap. So in Illinois, you have counties that are tax capped and you have counties that are not. PTEL is an acronym for Property Tax Extension Limitation Law. Those words are all important. It's a law that limits, if you remember extension, is the amount of money we're approved to get. So it's a law that limits the property taxes we're approved to get. How does it limit it? It limits it by CPI or 5%, whichever is less. Until a few years ago, no one really noticed the whichever is less part of that sentence, but it was very real. And so that's where you get back to the loss of purchasing power, right? CPI, inflation was going up 6.5%. We could only access 5% of it. And it's meant to do that. And actually, as you'll see, PTEL is actually going to come into play again this year because you'll see the change in property taxes relative to the change in property values. Essentially, property values are increasing at a very high rate in our district and amongst other districts near us, more than what CPI is. So, funny I mentioned that. This is a slide that has our historical EAV. So this is the equalized assessed value for the properties in our district, and it's separated by color code. So blue is residential. That's most of what our district is. That's most of what most districts are the residential properties. We also have a healthy balance of commercial and industrial, and very little farm and almost invisible railroad, but it technically is there if you zoom in far enough. If you notice, the 2024 number is quite a bit higher than the prior year. And if you try to eyeball it, the purple is kind of similar, the green is similar-ish, the blue is the one that really grew. this is a chart that I use to show how did the existing values change. So for example, this year, based on the data, the estimated data we have from the county, existing property values are increasing nearly 10%. On residential, they're up 10%. On commercial and industrial, they're not quite there, but 10% increase on residential. So y'all who live here and pay property taxes, I'd be curious, check your own assessment notice that you got, see what percentage increase that was. I'd be curious to know how that worked out for you, because that's what we're seeing in terms of the average across the entire county, or the average across our taxing district, excuse me. And then in previous years, it wasn't quite as high. So in 2023, you saw the average increase was about a little over 3.5%. In 2020, we saw values go down, because of the pandemic. So this is something that I watched to see the relative change. So we're at the highest increase of values that I have ever seen for this district. My records only go back to 2006 without digging into more boxes, but this is the highest that I have since at least then. So this is a notable year in terms of values increasing. New property. We had a peak of new property in 2022. That was really because of the Libertyville TIF coming back on. And if those of you who were here remember all of that, that is done and gone. We are now back at relatively normal levels. 13 million was our estimation for new property. And that's pretty consistent with our long-term number. We could range anywhere from 10 to 17 million in new property in a normal year. And most of that is going to be people building houses, making improvements to their houses. That's mostly what we see. In terms of new property, there you go. In terms of new property, most of the things are residential. We do sometimes have commercial development that's there. There was not a lot this year. Most of them were actually wrapping up previous commercial renovations, because this is always as of January 1st. And so if the building isn't totally built by January 1st, they book however much it is, and then the next year they put the rest on there. So not a lot of commercial development for this tax year. Then in terms of the levy, we have the history here of our property tax levy. And really the note here is that it hasn't always gone up. There was a decision by the board back in 2014 to lower the levy. And that has had a lasting impact that I'll show you. But essentially, you can kind of go, if you went to 2013, you kind of kept that bar going, that's what it would have been, but it was decreased that year, and that has a permanent impact on our taxes. We have been out of debt for several years, and so that's why there's no red anymore, because we have no debt. We're a debt-free district, which is a great thing. And so there's no extension, there's no levy or property taxes that go towards debt for that. The 2014 reduction had a pretty big increase that first year, and then the way the law works basically is you can get some of that back, but this is really what is showing you the ongoing impact of that reduction decision a decade ago, really. And so you're up to about, our taxes are about 1.5 million lower than they would have been had that reduction not happened 10 years ago. But that will continue to be tax relief that is experienced into the future. So when you're talking about the levy, the calculation, it's an algebraic formula that has 4 variables. 2 of those variables we will know, 2 of them we won't know. The one that we'll know is CPI, which is that percentage change in CPI. We know that's 3.4%. We know that for sure. We know our prior year's extension. We know that exactly. We have the sheet that has the exact number. What we don't know exactly is what the EAV and what the new property is going to be. We won't find that out until end of March. But our levy is due by the end of December. So we have to guess. We get data from the county to try to make educated guesses. And so we have really good data on making that guess. And so when I say 8.75% increase on the existing EAV, that means I have a spreadsheet of all 36,000 parcels in our taxing district, and I know what those totals are, and I know how those changed from last year. And I also know what all the new property is and where it's happening on a per parcel level. And so those things will go through fluctuations, but we have pretty good guesses for right now. So if I do all of that math, my projection is that our extension is going to be 99.2 million. So almost $100 million conversation. That means the average increase is 3.4%. So what does that mean? That doesn't mean everybody's taxes go up 3.4%. What that means is that in aggregate, the aggregate existing taxes will go up 3.4% by state law. Each individual person may go up by more than 3.4% or less than 3.4% relative to the change in their value. So if you look at your own valuation changes, is it a blue form? What color is the sheet? It's a blue. If you look at that, if yours went up 10%, that's higher than the average because the average was 8.75. If yours goes up 10%, your taxes might go up more than 3.4. But if you looked at yours and maybe yours only went up 7%, then your individual taxes might go up by less than that. It depends. But the aggregate, the average will be 3.4%. And what I'm projecting is the total increase that we'll have is 3.8 because of new property. So new property, that 13 million coming on the books of new developments, new houses, things like that, that will generate the other 0.4% increase is my projection. So then the question is, what do you levy? Because what I'm estimating is this is the extension, which is a 3.8% increase. Well, then what do you levy? I'm recommending a levy of 99.5 million, which makes a cushion of about 300,000. Historically here at this district, several years ago, we kind of went through a process of how much do we levy relative to what we think we'll be eligible for. And we ended up settling on 300,000. And that has worked out pretty well. We've not been in a position that you've under levied. So that has kept us there. If you do a levy of 99.5, that will mean a total increase of 4.09. Because that is under 5%, that now makes the public hearing optional. You're not required by law to have that public hearing. So why the cushion? The two variables that we don't know is the increase in existing EAV at 8.75%. What if it's not? And the way the algebra works, you have to project what if it's lower. So instead of 8.5, I then plug in a number. What if it's 2%? What if existing values, maybe they're wrong, the data got all wrong, and it's only up 2%? And these both have to happen for the math to work. And new property has to be not 13 million, but 23 million. There has to be 10 million missing somewhere, which would be odd to miss that much value. If both of those happened, then we would, based on a 99.5 levy, you would have left $212 on the table. So that is really why we levy the cushion, is because we don't know what those variables are going to be. How likely is it that we go from 8.75 estimate to a 2% increase realistically? Probably not very likely. But my goal is to not let you lose money on accidents. If you want to do it on purpose, let it be purposeful, but not on accident. And then same for new property. To actually go from 13 million to 23 million would be an outlier in the data for sure. There you go. What if the estimates are wrong? So we've been doing this for several years now. We've had a cushion roughly around 300,000. It's not exactly, but it's roughly around there. What have we actually used? And so this is the history showing many times we didn't really need to use much of it at all because we had really, really accurate data from the county. So when those numbers when this actual cushion needed are small, that's because we had really accurate information from the county. Last year was the first year that we really meaningfully ate into that cushion at 120,000. So if we had kept going with 11 or a few thousand, I probably would be at the position saying, we have really, really high quality data. I think we can go with a lower cushion. Because of 120,000 that we actually used last year, I am not comfortable changing that right now. And to be honest, if you lowered it, it would change you from a 4.09 increase to a 4.01 increase. Like it's not a meaningful difference in what you're asking for because the law still is going to cap you at the 3.4%. As a reminder, these are the assumptions that were built into our financial projections that we do every February. We update our long-term financial projections. In there, we had estimated 3.4 CPI That was built into the revenues that we assumed, and that we knew about. And then, interesting that this happened, we had assumed 13 million of new property. Just so happens that 13 million is the new property estimate that we have too. So those were built into our projections. And a reminder for where our projections were. This is the total ending surplus for our projections at that point. We will update these again once we get the final data and everything for next February. But this is showing very small surpluses for the next few years. That's with those built in. So our financial system is built on assuming the 3.4% CPI and the new property that's part of that. So what are the next steps? We're reviewing tonight. We also will have this as an item for the October Board of Education meeting. This is the long part. The October one will be very brief. Here are the highlights of the data, but we try to give 4 chances for the community to see this and for the board to see this and understand what we're doing. November 4th, we'll go through a final F&F review. So that this committee meeting in November, we'll go through a final renewal of the numbers, and that's where you'll have resolutions and all the other documents associated with that. Then the planned recommendation is to adopt this, at the November Board of Education meeting. And then the very next day, we will file this with the Lake County. It is due, the levy is due by the last Tuesday in December. However, we have been on a pattern of doing this in November, which I think is very wise, because I have been in a district where for some weird reason, we were unable to get a quorum at our November meeting, and we had to push it to December. If you wait until December and you, for some reason, can't get a quorum, maybe there's a lot of sick people, there's nothing you can do because there's no exceptions to the due date from the county. And so I like to make sure this is too critical of our resources that we need to make sure we secure that. And so that's why I pushed this a month early. Doing it earlier than that wouldn't make sense because we don't have good data. We don't really get good data from the county until about September, October timeline. Anyways. So that's the information that I have for you on our estimate.
So I think this is the 7th time I've heard you present this, and every time I am so pleased and relieved that you present this data to us every year. So thank you.
It gets better each year too. I like the
very polished
graphics and stuff. Yeah.
It has gotten better over the years, so I appreciate it very much. I am a little disappointed that you didn't do the pop quiz asking us when the levy is due.
That's on the off year when we're more into it, but I was trying to keep this brief.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
But if you're going to the Triple conference, Friday, we have the All Admin Academy. You go there and you will absolutely hear that there.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions? Like Dan said, we'll see this again and again and again. Okay, let's move on. Number D, policy 4:70, periodic review timeline.
Yeah, so we've had a request a few times to look at, we have policy 470, which says that we will have a periodic review. And we've had very good questions of, when was the last periodic review? And the great answer is, I have no idea. So we said, okay, let's look at how can we do this. We've never done this before. It is a little hard to find other districts that have. So how do we do this? And so what our goal was to try to look at our timeline to look at a process to have information for the board in December. That's the timeline for the board. More meat to that is we have a survey that's out right now to all of our departments to try to generate information on their solid waste. Some of this we don't know what's really happening in all the different departments. So we've asked them some information on what are the major things of solid, what are the major not sources of solid, maybe sources of components of their solid waste that's there. What is the kind of volume that they experience? What are the things that they've done? What are the obstacles that they see? Trying to gather that data. And so we're hoping to have that data by the end of this week or next week, and then try to back that into, okay, if this is, so one example I can give you is B&G, Mark and I were talking about how to do this process. Without skipping a beat, his first reaction was paper towels and toilet paper. those are the major sources of what B&G throws away. So then now we're going to go back and try to look at how do we procure our toilet paper and our paper towels. So and so we're going to talk about the sources of the major components. We wouldn't be able to highlight every single thing that we purchase and where do we get them. We're trying to hit the things that really end up in the solid waste in a material way. So there are some that you can probably guess, like food waste is a very common one and things like that, but we're going to get that information and share that with you. So I feel that we've got a good process. We've never done this before, so we're not experts in this, but we will do our best to kind of show you what we've come up with and then go from there. But our timeline would be, we've already had this information starting to go out. It went out last week. Taking the rest of this month to gather the data, November to really analyze it and talk through the procurement of that, and then come to December with here's our findings and here's recommendations that we would have.
I think there's a future III presentation in your future on this process.
I do not.
It's just a suggestion because my guess is a good number of school districts in the state have this policy in place, and a good number of those same districts probably are doing periodic, as in, every 10 years or something. So I think it's not unusual to be in this situation, but I think it'll be an interesting process to go through, an interesting exercise to do. So I look forward to that. Any questions or comments from the board?
No, thank you for doing it.
Yeah. Radon testing update. Who's got this one?
So I won't read you, but we have there for you kind of what the updates have been on radon testing. It's targeting for the winter. We'll probably do one building at a time just because the American Cancer Society doesn't have quite that many tests to do both buildings at one time. So we'll be doing that over the winter. And we've started talking about trying to anticipate, all right, what do we do pending results? What are the actions and what are the contingency plans we have once we get there? So we're on our way and the work is still in progress.
Okay.
I just really want to say thank you. This is one of the rare instances where the tail wagged the dog a little bit, and this request came from the board, and you've been very responsive in providing not only a comprehensive, but a cost-effective solution, so thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. Mark has done a ton of work and is doing most of the work on this. I will say it was the board that showed us a more cost-effective way to do this, because what we were looking at was a contractor to do this, and finding out that the American Cancer Society has a program like this that will provide the tests, process the test results for us, is very significant in terms of helping us to avoid a cost to pay 6 figures for somebody to come in and test our facilities.
Well, it's a win-win. It's a good partnership between the board and the administration, and it'll result in just safer facilities, so thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. Anyone else? Comments, questions? Okay, moving on. Summer 2025 capital projects.
So this is our first draft of summer 2025. I know we just finished telling you about what happened with summer 2024, but summer 2025 is coming, and this is the plan. This is the time where we're planning for it and putting those things together. Again, I don't need to read you all what's in the report. The big rocks are continuing roof replacement at Vernon Hills, HVAC replacement at LHS, and the replacement of the stadium parking lot at Vernon Hills. And so we've got some pictures in there for you to see some of the things, but some of the things are more maintenance 5-year things, but the big rocks are going to be those areas. And those both are multi-year projects that will take several years for us to be able to accomplish. But I think we're moving right along with those projects.
I'm guessing the Vernon Hills tennis team's going to be pretty happy.
I'm hoping both teams are happy to look at that. Because this is, to be fair, this is really focusing on the flooring. I don't know what you call it, the flooring, the court, court surface, to do that the 5-year maintenance on that.
Sounds good. Any comments, questions? Okay, I'm sure we'll hear much more about those as we get closer to that time. Beverage service.
So this is one that I don't quite have an agreement yet, but this is something we've been working on for a while now. We've had Coke forever at both of the buildings, separate contracts. Several years ago, I tried to amend them so that they would align and expire at the same time so I could do one contract for both schools rather than two separate ones for each school. And so we got our proposals back. The buildings have been looking at it. I think right now we're recommending moving forward with Pepsi, which would be a change for us. And so we're working out, trying to get contract and working out those details with Pepsi. But that's the status of where I'd love, if we have an agreement, to be able to have that for the October board meeting. It may not happen, but that's my goal, to try to get that there in place to start for November.
Okay. Any comments? Anyone like Coke over Pepsi, Pepsi over Coke? I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
I know there are going to be people passionate about.
Oh, yeah, there will be plenty. Or
If you put
people that'll be happy
If you
too.
put cherry flavoring in it, they're all good.
Yeah, people that'll be happy too. Okay. All right, that ends our discussion items, future agenda items. There's a few things that'll show up on the October board meeting, and then more talk on November 4th on the tax levy. Anyone else have any dollars and cents items for the future agenda items? Okay, then we will call the F&F adjourned. Thank you, everybody.